I don't think they counted other counties to put the time, you know what I mean? Because I think it's more, they got more
John
professionals running.
John Dixon's to
You
do.
know, they're not trying
Be a
to
little late.
control everything.
Right.
Look at your other counties. Do you think they have the mess that we have and spend the time that we spend? If you don't do it this time, things like next time.
Don't you kind of, can you keep your day job and be the
Sure.
they're professionals or they got jobs.
Nick goes out for 3 and 4 months at a time. Seriously, she's gone like, since she's been elected, I bet she didn't go 6 months. She left in August, July and August, she didn't get back and she's working. She's a works for a contractor. She just thought about, she's gone like 3 or 4 months this year. She's missed half the year. We need good people, like yourself, to run, to restructure.
Have you met my sister-in-law that bought the old post office in the county?
No, but she did.
Yeah, they fixed it. It was awesome.
That place was, Billy Merritt bought it. He's done a lot of work on it. And then Stephen Matthews got it.
He kind of boogered it up a little bit.
Billy Merritt, do you know Billy Merritt? She was an attorney. And she bought
we
the
waiting on
office
John?
there, living quarters and office.
Okay.
Yeah, my sister-in-law's living
Yeah,
there now.
we're ready to go.
Fixing up
He
the
is.
basement to be offices.
What?
She said she's ready whenever you are. I don't know if you're waiting on John.
John's coming, but he's gonna be late.
Let's give him a few minutes.
Yeah, Karen said she's ready whenever you are. So.
We're kind of having a conversation here. We know that it's 6 o'clock, but we have a board member that said he'd be here in a few minutes. We'd like to give him a little bit more time. I guess, Mr. Dykes, we can go ahead and inform the people here that if you have a request before us, you have to have 4 members from this board to approve your request. It's not a majority vote. If there's 6 of us, it takes 4. If there's 4 of us, it takes 4. If there's 5 of us, it takes 4. If it's 7, it takes 4. That's why we would like to wait till we get our 6th one tonight, because our number 7 guy, Bill Fletcher, I understand has other arrangements. So if you would just bear with us, we'll give him a few more minutes. And we appreciate you understanding. These microphones a little too sensitive.
We can move it back.
Is it on purpose? Did they buy them on purpose to entrap us?
Well,
They did, didn't they?
before they adjusted it, pretty much had half the mics up to the mouth. They wouldn't hear.
Yeah, that's what we like those.
You're gonna turn it to the red light. If you push that button on top, it'll put it on standby and they won't pick up anything. They're kind of hard to get it.
Hey, I kind of push. Yeah, whenever, like all that stuff you asked me about, the reason why is because you want to use it. Everybody get like the applicant should be allowed to look at it. And everybody up here that way. Everybody's got the same info because the idea is, you guys are making a decision based on what's presented, here.
Nothing more than
Just bigger. No, okay.
a cleaner copy of the tax map.
And that's fine. And I mean, like I said, if you do that and you want to bring it here and just say, but usually the idea is that staff or those guys do it. That's their job, right? Yeah, because again, y'all are the applicant, you're not the staff. Y'all are kind of sitting like a judge, semi-judge. So I don't want the judge going out and getting evidence. If I'm in trial, I bring in the evidence. Let me bring it in, and let the other guy bring it in.
When we first started, if you want something, ask for it. They'll like ask Karen for it, and she'll get it. Like, I want a clear copy of this. Okay. I want a deed pulled up, something else pulled up, and then she can get that and have it ready to be applied. So if there was something that's wrong, we get
Yeah.
it.
Can we do that before?
When you get your applied,
Yeah.
and
Because you know when you're going through your book, and if you see, hey, I can't really read this deed, you know, email Karen, I can't read this deed. Can somebody get a better copy or whatever? And you know, so that way it's staff, and then they'll put it in the book. Everybody else will get it. You know, the applicant will know. You know, get a copy of it. That way, nobody can say, "Oh, well, you guys relied on stuff that the staff didn't put in or we didn't put in." So this keeps everything on the up and up. So nobody feels like they got shafted. Vivian?
Is she gonna be gone for a little while?
She's went to get some copies.
Pardon me? We give him 5 minutes, we fixing to get started. We gave him 5 minutes, we fixing to get started.
Make sure tell them about the certain variances. You know,
Charlie, just relax, it'll all work out. You would let Mr. Dykes do that. Karen, they'll straighten out, relax. Go get a joint. Yeah, you need one tonight, you own it. All that stuff will get worked out.
I'm just saying we should do it, don't think. People sit and wait.
You worry about stuff.
Irritated when you sit and wait and.
Well, if Vivian get back, we get started. Vivian, we've been waiting on you for about 30 minutes. We're going to go ahead and call our meeting to order. Mr. Dixon is on his way, but I think we got a couple that hopefully would not be too complicated. If you would, please stand at this time as we have our invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Anderson, if you would, lead us in the invocation.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for all you provide. We thank you for the opportunity to live in this great country and in this beautiful county. Be with those that keep us safe internationally, globally, and of course locally. For this we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We do appreciate each and every one of you here tonight. We appreciate our board members being present with us. It's always good to have almost a full board. Mr. Dykes, I forgot Mr. Karen. We do appreciate Karen and the hard work that she does keep this board straight with her books and et cetera, and her planning commission. We appreciate the attorney, Ms. Sydney Knowles. This is the first time you've been here in several months. Good to have you back. Mr. Dykes, are there any
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, no, we don't have any updates on our appeals. They're still in judge's hands at this point, so we're just still waiting for the judge to issue orders.
no news, good news, right?
I guess at this point, yes, sir.
At this time, we ask that each and every person here tonight that plans to speak before this board, we ask that you stand, raise your right hand, and swear that the testimony you give will be the truth, the best of your knowledge. If you plan to speak before this board, please stand.
Yeah, and if you don't speak, it's not a big deal. If you don't raise, if you're not sworn in, please let us know and we'll swear you in when you come up. But if you'll raise your right hand, do you all swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you.
Mr. Carpenter, you act like you have something to say tonight.
Yes, sir, and I'm going to keep it as brief as I can. We do have one announcement, and that is a request to continue the Rutro variance. We have it listed on the agenda, but that's actually previously continued to May 24th at the March 23rd meeting.
Motion to continue, or correction, right? But it's
Yes, sir.
to continue Rutro variance request to March the 23rd? I mean, May the 23rd or 24th?
May 24th.
May the 24th. Have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue it to May the 24th.
Hold on one second. Matt, didn't we approve it at the last meeting?
Yes.
to have it, to go to May.
Yeah,
This was
it
just,
was actually continued to this meeting, and I just wanted to make that announcement
So,
and
yeah.
make sure that we didn't have anyone here tonight, since it does appear on our agenda tonight.
So we
So-
don't need, you saying we don't need it?
yeah, I don't know that you necessarily need a motion since you continued it. Didn't we vote to continue it 2
Yeah.
months at the last meeting?
In March, it was continued until May the 24th.
Right, so it was basically
And
a,
it showed up on the agenda tonight, and it's a mistake.
Yes, sir.
Are there anyone here on the issue, item number 4, the Ruthrow? Ruthrow? Anyone here? Very good. Anything else, Mr. Carpenter? Yes, sir. The first item on the agenda is liquor by variance. Blacker. Blackery. On behalf of Greg House,
Yes, sir.
state your name for the record.
David Blackerby?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Tell us what you want us to do.
Well, sir, the mic is sensitive.
I know they're dangerous, aren't they?
I'm requesting a 3-foot variance from the rear setback line, 15 foot to 12 foot for for purpose of the swimming pool. And would you like me to go into
Yes,
explanation
sir.
of?
You got it. You got to convince us why we should give it to you.
All right, sir. This is my first one. I'm gonna step back a little bit from this, but the pool was placed there in air. It's probably be best if you have the exhibits, the pictures. If you can see on the picture number 3 where it says east, it says rear of home. You can see the pool is really close to the piles of the home, and when we asked for the permit and what was submitted and what was approved and what was given to the construction crews was showing it right up against those piles, which the piles, we anticipate they're really deep and wouldn't hurt that. It was okay. My lead guy took it on himself to pull it. He thought it was too close, so he pulled it on, not knowing where the rear setback was. There was no fence at the time or anything, and the property was just adjoined. So it just built in error. It's just a mistake, and we didn't realize it until after the survey was done. So we realized where the problem was. So I'm just asking for that.
Your pool's already in,
Yes, sir.
and it's an honest mistake,
It is an honest mistake. Yes, sir.
and you asking for how much?
3-foot variance on the rear of the property, sir.
So you're reducing from a 15-foot to a 12-foot.
Correct, sir.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. We'll give you a chance to come back. Ms. Vivian? Do you have any comments?
I guess I'll stay open.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'd like to ask for the staff report to be entered into the record.
So enter.
And this appears to be an honest mistake, and at times, a reduction in setbacks can be made if hardship and unique circumstances can be shown.
Very good. Any questions? Very good. Anyone from the audience have anything to say on this variance? Anyone for it, against it? Anything you want to add?
No, sir. Just like I say, it is a hardship. It's an honest mistake. That's all I
Okay.
can say.
I
Very good.
just want to add, there was one public comment that we passed out tonight, even after your reports were made.
Mr. Dykes, do you want to read that?
Sure, this is, for the Blackerby variance 18-0011, dated April 20th, Planning Development Services, and may concern, Jim and Sandra West. The property owner of 56 Sea Oaks Road, Santa Rosa Beach. We do not approve the request for variance / special exception. The exception is stated requesting for 12 feet from rear of property instead of 15. Thank you, and please let us know if you have any questions. There's a copy of the, looks like the full contract and rendering of the site.
Are these people in the backyard?
Vivian, do you know if 56 Sea Oaks Road is the property immediately behind them?
I do not believe so. I don't believe so because I did receive a call from the homeowner directly behind the property this morning. And I spoke with her and advised her if she wanted to send any comments in, she could do so before the meeting. We would hand them out, and she did not have any comments that she sent.
These lots were platted before the new setbacks took effect, right? So some of the houses in this neighborhood would be built closer to 15 feet in the rear?
No, these have always had the 15-foot rear.
Okay.
I don't think you're gonna realize the big difference from 15 to 12, 3 foot. It's an honest mistake. Mr. Dixon, appreciate you coming.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Motion to close it to public discussion.
Motion to close public discussion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Karen, you good? Motion?
Motion to approve as submitted.
Were you here long enough?
I heard it. Yes, sir.
Karen, you have that discussion?
I think it's a pool, it's low to ground. It's 3 feet off the back.
You good?
See a problem with it?
Mr. Burgess, how you vote?
I vote yea.
Charlie?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Jeff? Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
You got your variance request.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Item number 2. Been, project located 67 Beacon Point Drive. Who's here to represent this? State your name for the record.
Tim Spears.
Pardon me?
Tim Spears is my name with Co-Style Homes, general contractor.
Coastal Home. Tim Spears.
Yes, sir.
Look it up.
And
What
I
you
also have
asking for?
The surveyor with me.
What's your, well, let's let him present what he's
Okay.
asking for.
Okay, this home is currently under construction. We had the foundation staked by the surveyor, and his field crew made a slight error to the point that it wasn't visible out on the job, even really pulling the tape. The house basically was shifted, the front porch, yeah, it was basically just shifted by, they used the wrong point. One of the, it may have been, I'm not sure the surveyor can answer this, but one of the property corners hits right in a power box. And so that corner was actually set a foot back that you can see on the survey. But that corner is a foot further back than what it actually is, and it's just labeled on the survey that it's a foot back. But this is a trapezoidal shaped lot, so when the shift was made, it's actually about a foot further from the opposite property corner or setback than it would have to be. So basically the whole house is the correct size, and it's just rotated slightly in the back so that the very back right corner is 6 inches over the side setback. The rear setback, it's further off than it has to be. And then the front porch is a foot shifted in, just the corner of the porch is shifted into the front setback. So because it's trapezoidal shaped, it doesn't affect the entire front of the house, just the one corner on the front and the one corner in the back.
Is it 1 foot in the setback?
It's 1 foot in the setback in the front and 6 inches in the back.
On the corner?
On the corner,
It's
right
not
on the-
6 inches, 8 inches, it's 1 foot.
Well, it's 1 foot in the front, exactly 1 foot, and it's exactly 6 inches or half a foot in the back, on the
On the
back
corner.
corner. Yes,
On
sir.
the corner.
Do we need to address the roof overhang in addition to the porch encroachment?
No.
No, I mean, the variance request relates to the setbacks. I don't know if there's any issues with the roof overhang.
We'd like to be able
That'd be
to
something.
address it when she comes up, county position on it.
So the roof overhang's the standard 18-inch overhang that would have been part of the approval with building department, so it's 6 inches,
Right.
as well, the whole structure.
Very good. Who's-
I got approval from the HOA, and that's part of what we turned in, and also the adjacent property owner additionally gave me a verbal approval.
What's your surveyor's name?
Douglas Van Heuvel.
Very nice to see you here. So many times surveyors make a mistake and they don't come up, so we appreciate you coming. Thank you for,
Thanks, sir.
and the only reason he's favorable is because you showed up. Usually we just tell him no and go on. He owes you a great deal for coming. Tell us what happened to your worker. They didn't get their coffee that morning?
Well, yeah, that sometimes happens, but they were given a stakeout of exactly what they were supposed to stake out. I reviewed the notes and everything, and it looked like they put it exactly where it was supposed to go. It turned out they used the wrong coordinate values for the place they set the instrument. That resulted in the building envelope being shifted to where the very back right corner was 6 inches into the 7.5 foot side setback. And in the front, one small corner of the porch, it's not a piece of the house, but the front porch is 1 foot in, and it comes out of the setback about 4 feet down the porch. So we're talking about a small triangular piece. And then, like I said, in the back, the actual foundation is 6 inches into the setback.
Most likely you asking for 6 inches all the way across and you asking for a foot all the way across. But if we grant you, perhaps your variance request is granted the area that's within that area, so it wouldn't be expanded on. You'd be good with that, right?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Well, mistakes happen. Did you fire these people, or you didn't give them a raise, did you?
No, I did ask one person to leave because of poor attitude and not being very conscientious in their work, and I've since hired somebody who's better.
You sure can't ask for any more than that. That's going to go a long way. Thank you very much for coming. Anything from the county? Nothing from the county? Anyone here in opposition? Anyone in support of? Anyone has anything? Yes, ma'am, or yes, sir? Just in support of. You want to state your name? Stand up and state your name for the record.
Drew Hill, owner of the record.
Pardon me?
I'm the owner of the house.
You're the owner of the house. Boy, you had this thing going your way till you set up. Very good. Thank you, sir. Y'all sit down. Motion to close it?
Mr. Johnson?
I would like to enter the staff report into the record.
Absolutely, so enter. Thank you. Motion closed, vote discussion.
Motion?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion,
I move to approve.
second.
Second.
Discussion.
I was thinking that we could approve it. We're supposed to do the minimum amount allowed, so I was thinking.
Just
we could
approve the foundation survey as it's
Yes.
submitted.
say, I think approve the foundation as it's submitted.
Yeah.
For the
You want to amend your motion?
It's an existing structure. So
Yeah.
You want to amend your motion?
I move to,
Grant the variance
Grant
that
the
is
variance as-
affected by the,
as submitted in the
Foundation
survey.
Second.
Karen, you get that?
Do we want to, just so I'm clear, would the board like to attach that as
Absolutely,
as part of the order, if
absolutely.
approved?
Okay.
Everyone's clear on the motion? Second, you second it.
Second.
We're discussing, Charlie loves to talk. We start, you through?
Through.
Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Dixon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
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 Appreciate your survey coming. Give him a bonus. Number 3, is number 3 the one that's supposed to be, are we hearing it, or are we,
No, we're hearing that.
number 3, we
It'll be
hearing?
number 4.
I've got a copy, yeah.
You got it corrected. Okay,
Originally it was.
I got it. Applicant Joseph Nelson is asking for a project on 36 Seawalk Circle. Oh my goodness, we got legal staff here tonight. Did y'all bring all the crowd with you? Is it
but for
some?
a different one, sure.
Okay, well, good.
I didn't put up a stand, pardon me.
Y'all kind of hit every one of them, didn't you?
Here and there, you know. Good
Is this-
evening, Melissa Ward with Dunlap and Chipman for Scott and Kim Richter. And you may recall this item in particular. Last month, we asked for a continuance because the advertisement was slightly, it needed to be improved. So we improved the advertisement that went in the paper, sent out new letters to the adjacent property owners within 300 feet, and updated the sign on the property. So tonight, I'm going to give you a brief the brief summary of this particular request. The owners, Scott and Kim, are here, and the builder is here to answer questions and to give a short amount of testimony to hopefully clarify some of the questions there may be. This property is a part of the Seawalk subdivision, and I don't suppose this is it? Okay. She told me earlier today I had to use the microphone for walking around.
Is it already built?
There isn't, is it on?
Yep, it's on.
There's an existing home on the property. They own lot 10. There is a house built there. And I have the survey. So I just want to show you the plat of Seawalk subdivision. Seawalk is a replat of an existing subdivision of Gulf Shore Manor. So this is our lot. This is the house that's there. It has been there since at least 2000. And the building is at a 5-foot setback on the side here and over here, and a 10-foot setback in the back. And it goes up 1 story, and then it cantilevers out, and then it continues for 2 more stories. It's 3 stories now. And this green line here is a 20-foot front setback. As you can see, you might be able to tell from here, there's a cul-de-sac right here. So the setback curves into the property. The property depth on the longest side is about 63 feet. And, as you can see that the angle of the property is a little different, so it's a little awkward. In particular, what they are going to do, what the request is to reduce this front setback a maximum of 3 feet, because they want to put in an improvement here in an elevator to be able to go in to the home, to go up to the 2nd, 3rd, and then also, and they want to add a 4th floor. The requested variance requires that we ask for the 5-foot side setback and for the 10-foot setback from 15, because it's existing as it is. And in order to expand on your home, you have to be compliant with current standards, and to do that, you have to get a variance. So that's a brief summary of exactly what we're asking.
All right, wait a minute. Where is your 5-foot setback you're requesting?
The 5-foot setback is on the
Side with air conditioning?
north side here, and then this corner comes over 5 feet on this side over here.
Well, now, on the side over there where the AC is located, you got 4.8 and 6.5. You asking for a 5-foot all the way?
I suppose that should be 4.8 then at the corner piece, technically.
Technically, you asking for a variance for a structure that's already there, you're not gonna add to it.
We're going to add up, not out.
Right.
Except for
Well, right now, we're addressing that side setback.
Okay.
Now, you're gonna ask for side setback to 7.5, is that correct?
It is.
And you're asking for 3.2 inches? 3.2 inches?
3.4.
But you're not asking all the way down, it's just in that affected area.
Just in the area, well, because over here it's 6 foot, as you mentioned, so.
Right.
The way I would maybe recommend is that instead of asking for inches and so forth, that we would ask that the house be allowed to remain in its existing footprint with the exception of 20-foot front setback. We don't want to encroach on any further. This footprint is not going to get any bigger. It's that this front piece here, 5 feet from this front piece, is going to be the only new encroachment on the ground.
Okay, on the side, what side is that? East side, south side, west side?
It'll be on the east side. The 20-foot front setback is on the east.
So the east side, you're asking for a variance that will cover the structure that's there, approximately 4.8 on the front, reducing that 3.4, and asking for a 1 foot on the rear, which is 1 foot, 6.5.
The
It'd be the structure, cause, you know, we.
right. So the I'm gonna put this down. There we go. So the existing structure, yes, 4.8 on the east side of it, and 6 on the rear side of it is where it exists, on the west side of that, on the north end. The rear setback from 15 to 10, which is where the property is, where the house is built now, and then again it goes up 1 story and then it cantilevers, we believe 18 inches or so, 2 feet. That's a big difference though. I wanted to provide a copy of the 4th floor improvements, and the builder is here to explain some of the improvements, and we need to get, and I'd like to get into the purpose of the variance. The owners of the property are full-time caregivers for their parents. They are modifying the downstairs. Currently has like a bedroom and a storage area, and they're going to, or a living area and a storage area, and they're going to remodel it to have a bedroom downstairs and a bathroom and an elevator. The existing kitchen and living facilities are on the 2nd story, so they'll need the elevator to get upstairs and have their meals and where the regular living area is.
Where's your elevator going?
On the front,
Where at?
right here.
No, it's going right here. That's gonna be the stairs, the elevator will be just inside of that.
Oh, but this is the stairs here, the elevator here.
What's your, that little square up there on that east corner, is that part of the design, or is that relevant or not relevant?
This right here?
Yeah.
This is, I marked, this is, the green is the setback. I marked out the 5 feet that'll come out for the stairs, because the elevator's going here, and this hatched area is the extent of that encroachment into the 20-foot front setback. So a lot of it will fit without having a variance, but this 27 square feet right here is the variance, that hatching right there. And that's an exhibit in your package that we provided, so I'm not sure if you have that, but I do believe, I mean, we hatched it out for you.
Is anything happening with the pool?
No, sir.
So you're not asking for any variance around the pool? What is that green line?
That was to show the 20, it didn't show up as well as I wanted it to. This says 20 foot building setback. This is the 20-foot curve right here. That's what it's pointing to.
So that pool area doesn't mean anything?
No, this is, it's there now, and it's so the bottom, the very first floor, this is livable, this is a swimming pool. The 2nd floor covers this, and the 3rd floor covers it, and they're asking for a 4th floor.
Basically, you're asking in that orange or the yellow, whatever there is, the only variance request you're asking is just 27 feet?
27 square feet within that 20-foot front setback.
Okay, I got you. Go ahead.
So this is, I'm going to hand to, as evidence, is the 4th floor, where they have a, and I'm going to give one to planning, to give you an idea of what the addition on the 4th story would be. Yeah. So let me say too, this is not, the request here is, the builder has presented a BPFR to the planning department with a remodel. That remodel sparked this, or that BPFR sparked this variance request. They told them you can't do it, it's non-conforming, you have to bring it conforming, and then we can move forward. So one of the original plans that they submitted there were some, so the plan has changed and continues to change a little bit. One of the requirements, as you do an expansion on a house or a renovation, if you increase the number of bedrooms, you have to increase the number of parking spaces on the site. That fourth story drawing indicates that there's a bedroom there. There are currently 4 bedrooms in the house. If we get the variance and build the fourth story, it'll still only have 4 bedrooms. So I'm handing out for you now a layout where they can have 3 parking spaces on the site, which meets the code.
If they had 5 bedroom, how many parking spaces would it be required?
4.
So you're telling me that it's gonna go from a 4 bedroom to possibly a 4 bedroom, what's gonna happen to the other bedroom?
It's a 4 bedroom house now, there'll be 4 bedrooms.
You added a bedroom, you're doing away with a bedroom, is that correct?
Well, what it is the first story now is an area that is sort of like an open area because people walk through the house and to go to the pool. Like, when they come to visit, they go in there and they go to the pool. And they're changing that, and there's a storage room, like a utility room there. So the parents have to sleep on the first floor. So they move 1 bedroom down and shift some of that living space up. So they're shifting the rooms around, but they're not adding another room. So I'm going to let the builders speak to that. But before, I'm sorry?
Petitioners or applicants, Exhibit A, composite, the 2 pieces of paper.
Thank you.
Both on Exhibit A or Exhibit A and B?
Just a composite Exhibit A.
Exhibit A. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay.
Or another bedroom.
So the purpose of having the renovations, and the owner is here, we'd like to get him to speak to it in just a moment, but in simple terms, they are doing the renovations because they're getting ready to retire and move here permanently. They are the primary and solitary caregivers of their parents who need the elevator to get to the second floor, and also Mr. Richter will tell you about his need for having the elevator to get to the second floor due to his medical conditions. The parents are not, and we have some documentation in the exhibits that show the doctors have written the letters saying that they needed them. The parents do not do their own transportation. They don't do their own. They have constant caregiving, and so the purpose of that is to make it so that they can come and stay here, live here permanently, and have the availability of being in the house and utilize the living space, not just the downstairs bedroom, as it would due to the renovations. So there's some interesting things about the property that I would just like to bring up before I bring up Mr. Richter. The first thing is that I'd like to remind you that this house was permitted began construction probably around 1999. We requested the building permits from the building department, and there's an exhibit there that shows that they don't have anything over 10 years old, so they don't have a building permit for us to look at. But we know that because the county appraiser's office shows that it was built in 2000, that it had to have started in either early 2000 or possibly 1999. The lot, when it was developed or platted, was 1991. At the time that this was approved to be built, either by the building department or whatever, we don't know if they had a plan review, but we know they had to have a building permit. It is entirely possible that in 1996 they applied the rule about an administrative setback variance based on the fact that it predated that comp plan adoption of 96, because that's what they used to do. So we don't have testimony to that effect, and we don't have evidence. We're making an assumption, because when they found out that they didn't meet the code, they were very surprised. And he's going to give testimony to you that he had a survey that said he had a 10-foot building setback and a 5-foot building setback. He's going to give you testimony that the people that sold him the property mentioned that this was your buildable area, and they drew it out, and he has evidence to that effect from his files, not from the county records. In addition to that, we know that it's been there on all this time. Nobody has made any comment about it, and there's been no code violation. And to that end, we've also, since we sent out letters to it, a few of the neighbors, 3 or 4 of the neighbors, have sent in letters saying, we're good with it. We're okay with your variance, and that's in your packets. In addition to that, one of the ladies worked with Mr. Cadenhead's office, who was part of the development team on this particular subdivision, and she recalls, in her email, she states to you that she recalls those were the setbacks at the time. So what we're dealing with is a change in how it was interpreted, and it doesn't meet the code today, but at the time that it was built, we believe that they felt like they had met the code. That doesn't give us any weight. We're just giving you information as to how it occurred. So if it's all right with you, unless you have any questions of me, I'd like to bring Mr. Richter up.
Please do.
Okay?
State your name for the record.
My name is Scott Richter.
Mr. Richter, can you tell me when you bought the property?
We bought the property in 1992. We've been property owners here since 1984. We've been coming here since the 70s. I'm in my late 60s. I'd like to retire here. We are full-time caregivers to my wife's parents who are in their 90s. My wife's father is able to do stairs, not many. My wife's mother is with a walker. I've got a bad knee. I have to have cortisone injections periodically. I also have AFib for my heart. I'm trying to retire this year. I feel like this is somewhat of a hardship case because of the fact we really can't go very many places unless we have to take care of our parents. And as I age, or as we age, we do want to put our roots down here. We have children, probably going to have grandchildren, so we'd like to have the house big enough to accommodate, our family. And when we built the house, I've got the original survey, the original copy. The building setback line was 10 feet from the back of the property line, 5 feet from either side, and 20 feet from the front. It's not a very deep buildable lot. The house itself is about 22 feet from front to back on a rectangle.
Mr. Richter, who provided you the survey?
The survey was Leland Empey, but the builder was Survey Express. I've also got the certificate of occupancy, which was faxed to my builder on January the 31st, 2001 from the Walton County Building Department. Because I guess there was some issue with...
They don't keep the records past.
Okay, but I did happen to look through my files and find this. And what we're asking for is not to encroach on anybody. We're just trying to make the house more usable for our needs, and we sincerely have those needs. And as we age, you don't think you need an elevator, but I'm getting to the age where, guys, I need an elevator. We need one for our parents for sure. So.
Can you tell the board, if you would, if you're unable to get the variance for whatever reason, what impact that has on you and your plan to move here? Well,
like I say, we've been coming here since the 70s, the late 70s, and the area's developed. It's done a lot of changing over the years, as you're aware. We love the area, and this is where we planned on living and retiring. So.
And you're going to give those to, let me just say too, these are his original copies, and we don't have copies of it. So if we could let you take a look at them, if we could get them back or get copies made so we can have the originals back, that would be preferable, so we can put them back in the file. If you would hand them to Karen.
Yeah, we need to get
copies. We need to get copies, yes.
Part of the record.
Do you want us to wait for her to come back?
No, I think we can go ahead. Where are you moving from?
Moving from Georgia.
Atlanta?
No, sir. We live outside of Atlanta, a place called Lake Oconee or Eatonton area.
Everything's up there, Atlanta, isn't it?
Yeah.
Georgia, Atlanta.
Yeah, we made a conscious decision to move away from Atlanta about 12 years ago. It's getting pretty crowded, Where we live, we live outside of Atlanta. We've slowed down the lifestyle. I'm a veterinarian, I'm still working, but
Oh, really? Large animals, small animals?
small.
Ah,
So,
too bad.
notice you have an Auburn graduate, I went to.
Oh, this gets worse. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
I think, in my opinion, the board's probably sympathetic to your 5 foot on the east side and your 10 foot in the back structure already there, and you're only asking for 27 feet on the front.
Correct.
27 square feet on the front, you're not encroaching a whole lot in the setback, but that's where your stairway and elevator will be. Is that what you're?
Right, and the reason is if you look at the way the property sits, it's a wider from front to back on that part of the property. We don't have the width or the depth on the other side of the property. In the house, the internal structure of the basement is only 20 feet from front to back. We need that extra foot to make a stairwell that's functional and yet also put an elevator in to get up to the different floors.
And you telling the board tonight, it's your testimony that this will be a 4-bedroom house, not a 5-bedroom house?
Correct. It will be 4-bedroom. It is now presently 3-bedroom. And I know Melissa misunderstood that.
Okay, it's a 4-bedroom. Okay, it's not gonna be a 5-bedroom turned into a rental and the help parties?
No.
Okay.
It's presently a 3-bedroom. We plan to put it into a 4-bedroom, and that's what we would like to do.
Okay.
And we need that with kids, parents, and grandkids right now, so.
Any questions? Anyone has any questions? Thank you. Melissa, anything?
Yes, actually, I do.
Okay.
Will this building be in accordance with the 50-foot height restriction?
Correct. It should be.
They can't
The
build.
builders here, if you have any questions.
Yeah, let's bring him out, because he can't build. They won't issue a permit.
This is the originals.
Yeah.
Just,
Those are copies, he has the original.
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry. This is the only copy
Stamped
there's.
copy is of the originals here, if you'd like to see the stamped copy.
No,
But
This is a copy.
You might-
I didn't have anything, I mean, I just kind of looked through my files.
being from Auburn, you might have falsified it.
I wouldn't take that, Mr. Dixon. I just wouldn't.
Oh, I didn't see him sitting over there.
So if the board would like to ask any questions of the builder, he is here, and he can explain the process that he went through before he came to the board. So the BPFR and the plans that he's drawn up.
Sure.
Okay?
State your name for the record, sir.
My name is Eric Hellerstedt with ADCO Building Services.
ADCO?
ADCO, ADCO. Eric, ERIC.
Mr. Burgess, you want to ask him a question?
Yes, my question was, with the 4th floor addition, will the building still adhere to the 50-foot height restriction?
Yes, sir, it will. It's actually drawn, I did a diagram for permitting purposes.
Okay.
It's actually going to be a total of 47 possible. We're in preliminary stages of making the top floor 9 or 10 feet, but no more than 47.
Okay.
And that's to the ridge. That's not to the mid-line or however. And Escambia, I know, they have a different way of calculating that. But here,
Correct.
I know it's to the peak, right?
Okay, well, as long as it's
So
going to
it'll
be.
be 47 to the ridge.
Okay, thank you.
And the actual reason for the addition for the elevator kit and so forth is actually to make the trusses work. There's no way we'd have to tear the house down to make this structure work with an elevator. It's such an old truss system, it wouldn't have worked with the existing setbacks, front, back, side, without bumping it out a little bit. And I did it as little as possible, and little impact to the front setback.
Sure.
Okay.
So that was the best I could do.
I understand.
With the design.
The other complicating issue is instead of the lot line in the front being straight, it's in a curve, so
Right.
it's just a hard piece of property.
Looking at your survey, Express Personal Land Surveying, it shows a 10-foot easement and a 5-foot easement, I believe, instead of a setback.
Yes, sir. If you look at where I think it says BSL, I wasn't sure what that meant, but it's building setback line. on the 5, and then it's 10 BSL on the back.
We can recognize, and let me say for the board, and we've had this discussion, if I can, right on the side here, it clearly says, and it's in the same type print as the surveyor, that this is a 10-foot easement. But the document, as it was provided to him, clearly has arrows here that say 10-foot BSL, 5-foot BSL, and 20-foot BSL, and that is what he received, and it is sealed. So they either went in and hand drew that in and then sealed the document when they gave it to him, but this is what he got as an original document. And my point of that is that is what he operated with when they got the original building permit and built the house.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you know, what's the easements for?
Well, they are not defined. I know that the 5-foot easements are walkways between the houses because
Have you pulled the document?
The covenants, yes.
The document is, the easement document, you pull the document and it clearly says the easement is a 5-foot walkway.
Yes, sir. There's, we submitted copies of, well, I apologize. The last time we were here, we had copies of all of the covenants and restrictions, and we had, were ready to do that until we determined it had to be continued for advertisement purposes. But we did have the documents, and I can give you those documents if you prefer.
No, I'm just asking that you know, when
Yeah.
it shows up as the easement, I like to know what kind of easement. It's kind of immaterial because the house is done and built, but I would like to know what kind of easement it is.
So right here, I think you can hear, right here, this is the 5-foot easement here, and this 5-foot easement here. In this 5-foot easement is a pathway with some, like a wood, like
Right.
a boardwalk there. This right here is San Juan. There's parking here, and the beach is right down here. So what it allows for, this whole subdivision has these 5-foot easements that go through here to these roadways that go down to the beach.
What about the 10-foot, the 10-foot easement?
They're on every one of on the original plat.
Utility easement?
Yes, sir. They're utilities.
Is a 10-foot utility easement?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But every house is built 10 foot off of whatever that property line is in the back, and then
Every house in that subdivision is built like this?
It is, yes.
How many houses is in the subdivision?
14.
14 houses in the subdivision,
Yes,
okay. I think you've covered everything. Any questions? I think the main thing you asked for is reduce to 5 foot where it affects the house. You're reducing to 10 foot where it affects the house. You asked for a new variance that we can say 27 square feet that is outlined in the footprint that you gave us. And you're good with that, right? 27 square feet. And your builder's good enough to build within it, not come back. Very good. We'll give you a chance to come back.
The one side is the 4.8.
Well, it's close to 5. This is Walden County, as long as we get close. We'll give you a chance to come back. Let's see what the county has to say. Dib?
Mr. Chairman, if we have those other documents, we'll just mark those as applicant's exhibit B.
Absolutely. We need those documents back when you get through with them. Can we take up a collection and buy the county some papers so we can get more than one copy?
I did, yes.
We know we're in the budget, so. Vivian, how do you feel about this?
Well, staff does not have objections to the setback reductions. Should the case be determined to be a hardship in unique circumstances, our concern at the moment is the parking, to verify that it can be put in there for the fourth bedroom and meet our standards. So that is our
But
concern.
y'all would determine that after, if the variances, you would determine that before he can go further with it, right?
Well, I think we would need to verify that it can be.
Yes, sir. That review is performed at the building permit review stage prior to them going to the building department.
Right. We grant the variance, they got to prove to you, or they will not get the building permit. That's another layer of government Walton had. Very good. Very good. Anything else?
That would be all that I have at this time. We did have the several letters of support that are in your packet, one letter of opposition, and so you can take that into consideration.
Very good. Thank you, Vivian. Anyone from the public like to speak in regards to this issue, either for or against? No one has anything to say about this issue. Melissa, anything you want to add?
No, sir.
You think you're in good shape, huh? You feeling pretty good. Motion closed. Motion closed, public discussion.
I'll move to close public
Thank
discussion.
you. I thought y'all took a nap. Second?
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion to approve as presented. I don't know if it'd be approved as presented. You could approve it with the 4.8 on the front and the 6.5, that the variance will be reduced to that for the documented plot plan that was provided in the 10-foot rear, which in some places it's a little less or et cetera, and then the 27 square feet as outlined in.
I'll make a motion to approve the variance with 5 feet on each side to encompass the actual house footprint like it is, and along with the 10 foot on the rear.
You don't need 5 feet on each side. You need 4.8. 4.8 on the front, 6.5 on the back, on that side.
From
Let me find where I'm at on this thing. There's the front, there's the side. Here.
Yeah.
Right there and right there. I don't want to give them no more than we have to.
Yeah. So we're gonna give them
4 point, we're going to reduce this up here to like 3.3 point. You don't like,
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
May I make a motion to approve the variance with the side and rear setbacks in accordance with the dimensions of the survey and grant a 3-foot reduction to the front setback from 20 to 17?
Charlie, is that what you were going to say?
sounds good to me.
Can I
Do you
make
want
a
to-
comment before that happens? Can we do this or go in with a motion?
Yeah, you can go with the motion, then you can have your discussion. as to-
Well, I don't want to give them 3 foot all the way across because they don't need it.
He wants to do
They
this.
don't, this little area that she showed us, like I said, I don't want to give them no more than we have to. Let's just give them what they asked for.
That little
If I might revise my motion, I would do so to approve the variance with the side and rear setbacks as shown in accordance with the dimensions of the survey, and the front setback from 20 to 17 feet only in the area to encompass the 27 square feet.
Second,
Second.
discussion.
I think there's a clear hardship with the, defined with the parents and the needing to get to the second floor for the kitchen and everything. I think he's got some other issues. And then, the house was already existing, so it wouldn't be too big of a deal for anybody.
I agree. Any further discussion? Mr. Burgess, you made the motion. How do you vote?
Aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Aye. Bill?
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Kind of lost where I was at when I heard a nay. You got your variance request. You nay without any discussion. It's just a nay thing. Sometimes we do that.
Mr. Chairman.
I have nothing but negative things to say about it.
Mr. Hall's here, if we might be able to bump up the one so he can get in and out for his,
No, we refuse to do that. We're not
grandchild
going,
that might be-
we're not going to
I don't
help
know
them out.
if your grandchild's here or not, but.
All right, let me ask you something. Hang on a minute. We took care of 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now we're talking about 5 and 6.
Right.
And so do we have a 7?
I believe so.
Now, which one do you have a conflict with?
Number 6.
You have a conflict with San Roy Road, right?
And Mr. Hall's here, so he can step up and handle that, and then I can step back up and handle the
Who's
remaining.
here for Palm Court variance? what we would like to ask you, there is a kind of a situation that is occurring with our legal staff. He has a conflict with number 6. The gentleman that's the attorney, I guess, in the door, is that right? And what is his name?
Mr. Steve Hall.
Mr. Steve Hall has a situation at the hospital that he needs to get to about his grandchild that is coming into this world. We would like to ask that y'all would give him consideration and let us just switch this around a little bit. You good? All right, Mr. Dice. Mr. Hall?
Stand in the way of somebody going to see a grandchild live.
Do number 6.
Moving to number 6. Welcome to our board, Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate the consideration.
Yes, sir. Get you in, get you out, and enjoy the moment. Number 6, item number 6. Let's see, San Roy Road between 20 San Roy Road and 62. Who's here to present this? State your name for the record.
Hi there, my name's Andrew Branoff.
Andrew Brown?
Branoff.
Branoff?
I'm an assistant as well. I'm Nick Benanati. I'm just going to throw these.
Are y'all lawyers?
No, I'm the applicant. He's helping me.
You don't like being called lawyers, do you? Makes you nervous.
Thank you for your time this evening. My name's Andrew Branoff. I've written a statement that I'd like to read, and I've prepared some graphics to help tell my story. Whenever you're ready, I'll get started.
What do you do for a living if you're not a lawyer?
I work in commercial insurance.
Commercial insurance. Okay, good deal.
And I'm just trying to, it helps me to understand.
Yes, sir. We want you to. Go ahead.
So my name's Andrew Branoff, and I own the property located at 6 San Roy Road. My family's been coming to this area since 1988 and have been homeowners in this community since 2001. I have multiple family members that live here and are members of the Cedar Grove community. My wife and our 3 kids love it here, and it's always been our dream to build a home in this area. In 2016, I found what I thought was the perfect property. Began negotiations with the owner and ended up buying the property in early April 2017. Before I bought the property, I hired a local licensed surveyor and a local licensed architect who worked with the county and confirmed I could build up to the utility easement. And I also had an appraisal completed. Houses built over the previous decades had built up to the utility easement, including the houses on both sides of my property. I also have emails from the county in 2016 about a similar property as mine that clearly show they could build up to the utility easement without needing a variance. I understand that the interpretation of the code has recently changed and that a variance is now needed in order to build up to the utility easement, which is why I'm here today. I have prepared a graphic that helps highlight the timing of when I bought the property and how that relates to the timing of the new interpretation.
Should we try this in the clerk or just hand it directly to you?
No, you need to give it to Karen. Karen's give it to our new lawyer, and our lawyer is we're going to make this part of exhibit.
Got enough for everybody, Mr. Chairman.
We are going to make this an exhibit, right?
We'll make it applicant's exhibit A.
Thank you. Under the rules of interpretation, the director has the authority to interpret code, and I recognize that and I get that. The left side of the reinterpretation graphic includes county staff emails noting the historical interpretation that allowed building up to the utility easement. These emails were sent and interpreted under the prior director, and that historical practice and interpretation was in place up through 2/1/17. The director position was vacant between 2/2/17 and 4/24/17. The current interpretation, which adds another 20 feet beyond the utility easement as a setback, became effective with the installation of the current director on 4/25/17. What the attached graphic shows is that I started my purchase process in November 2016 under the prior interpretation and completed my purchase on April 13, 2017 under the prior interpretation. Just 12 days after my purchase, the reinterpretation occurs, and the reinterpretation results in about a 50% reduction in my buildable area. which immediately pulled the rug out from under me. I had no way to anticipate this, and I had no way to protect myself. I'd like to make it clear that I'm not asking to build on top of the utility easement. I only want to build up to the utility easement the same way my neighbors on both sides of my property have done, which is the same way it had been done for decades before the recent change in interpretation. The director has the power to interpret code, and I respect that, but such a severe interpretation change, contrary to the decades of past practice, becomes an issue of fairness, as I've been badly damaged. In discussing this situation with county staff, the recent reinterpretation is acknowledged, and the staff has referred me to the variance process to recover my lost buildable area. After the start of the game, the goalposts have been unfairly pushed back on me, and the extraordinary situation meets the purpose of a variance under Chapter 8 of the Land Development Code. I was pleased to read on page 1 of the staff report that the staff finding is that my variance application meets the criteria for a variance, and on page 3 that staff recommends my variance application meets the Land Development Code. I have a second graphic.
Could we go ahead and provide a copy to the county as well this time? Mr. Dixon, you think you could pass one of those back down to us so we can provide it to the county staff?
So I prepared a second graphic that illustrates the shallow configuration of the buildable area as a result of the reinterpretation. On the north side of my property, there's a drainage easement, so I can't simply push the building footprint to the north. The resulting limitation from the drainage easement meets the purpose for a variance for extraordinary conditions. With the drainage easement to the north, combined with the new interpretation of the utility easement to the south, it forces my buildable footprint into a wide and shallow configuration that is impractical and out of character with the other homes in my neighborhood. As a point of reference, a Ford F-150 pickup truck is 20.3 feet long. So when considering the interior living space on the site plan enclosed that illustrates the buildable area without variance, it's less than the length of one F-150 truck, which meets the purpose of a variance for shallowness under Chapter 8 of the Land Development Code. San Roy is one of the most beautiful streets I've seen, with beautiful natural elements and high character homes. An oddly shallow home set back in a staggered way behind both next door neighbors doesn't help the look of the area or the street. The appraisal I had done before I bought the property was based on building up to the utility easement, which was common knowledge at the time. Once I learned a few months ago that there was a new interpretation of the code and that 20-foot setback from the utility easement was going to be enforced, I spoke with the appraiser and updated him with a new interpretation of the code, which reduces my buildable footprint by about half.
I'd like to ask you a question, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Sure.
You keep calling a utility easement. Are you referring to this 33-foot access utility easement?
Yes, 33-foot.
Access, ingress, egress, utility
Yes.
easement. So let's put on the record, it's not a utility easement, it's ingress, egress.
That's correct. The plat, it calls it, and the old government patent deeds call it, it's an access and utility right-of-way. It's been a time, a lot of people involved, it's called an easement, but no, it's a right-of-way by title.
Right.
Yes.
So I don't want to go on top of it, I just want to go up to it.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so the appraisal I had done before I bought the property was based on building up to the access and utility easement, which was common knowledge at the time. Once I learned a few months ago that there was a new interpretation of the code and that a 20-foot setback from the access and utility easement was going to be enforced, I spoke with the appraiser and updated him with a new interpretation of the code, which reduces my buildable footprint by about half. Not surprisingly, the appraiser has advised that the updated value is 20% less than what I bought the property for just a year ago.
Well, let me ask you another question, if you don't mind me interrupting.
Sure.
You're talking about cutting your building space in half, or are you talking about from 5,000 feet to 5,000 to 2,500 square feet, or are you talking about 1,500 to 750? How big a house
It's the 20-foot, it's the space in the yellow on the
I'm talking
truck.
about square foot. Do you have a house plan
I
designed?
have a house plan.
And how many square feet is the house?
Well, it's hard to say because I think most of the first floor is going to have to be dedicated to parking, because we're working our way through it, but we do have a site plan. We're trying to establish, hopefully, to be able to go up to the accessing utility easement.
Well, there again, I like to know, I like to know square feet. When you start talking about square footage, are you talking about 5,000 to 2,500, or are you talking about 10,000 to 5,000? Or are you talking about 1,000 to 750? What kind of house are you gonna build? I mean, you sit here, you're telling us that it cuts at 50%. Did you say 50%?
Yeah, the yellow space cuts it about in half. And so I think most of the first floor is going to have to be parking because of the parking requirements. And
Well, let's just say, how big a house do you have planned?
maybe a 3,000 square foot house.
What's your
I don't know,
foot?
maybe-
What's your foot? Is it 50 by 50 or 60 by 50?
All right, so what we can definitely speak to is the footprint. So we've got, the width on this line is 65.35 feet. We got 7.5 foot setbacks on the sides. So we're talking about roughly 50 feet wide. And what we've done as far as trying to design and figure out what the original interpretation of the draft would be versus what we're allowed to do now without a variance. The original version would have been around 50 feet deep, enough space to do a house. So you can calculate that based on the various measurements on the plans. It's around 50 feet. The new reduction, by adding a 20-foot setback, Andrew's got an architect engaged who's done some preliminary work. He's calculated it's about 29.5 feet is remaining. And so what you see on here, it's at 29.5 feet, it's this whole area. So if this was all interior square footage, you could basically get a truck and a half. He's got it shown having a porch because he absolutely wants a porch on the lake. So that's why it looks a little bit misleading. But the footprint of the house would be roughly 29 feet by 50 feet. So,
But then you lose about 2 feet for exterior wall and studs.
So you got 1,500 feet you got 1,500, what, 30 times, that's 1,500, how many stories is it gonna
that's
be?
about 1,500 on the ground. We anticipate having to use the entire ground floor parking and then probably 2 stories above. So around 3,000 square feet.
We'd like to have some exterior living space, and that was the point of the location.
Okay, so you going from 6,000 to 3,000, or you're going from 6,000 to 3,000, that's what you're saying?
Yeah, the problem is the odd shape and the shallow and, the length of a truck.
Look,
That's
you have some idea of what kind of square footage. You're going from 6,000 square footage to 3,000 when you start talking about it's cutting it in half. Yes or no?
Yes. Is that
Okay,
true?
now go ahead.
Okay. All right. So once I learned a few months ago that there was a new interpretation of the code and that 20-foot setback from the access and utility easement was going to be enforced, I spoke with the appraiser and updated him of the new interpretation of the code, which reduces my buildable footprint by about half. Not surprisingly, the appraiser has advised me that the updated value is 20% less than what I bought the property for just a year ago. Other local professionals advise the resulting value reduction could be as much higher and as high as 40%. And that decrease is tied directly to the new interpretation of the code that occurred just 12 days after my purchase of the property. Unlike others that may come before you asking for variance so they can maximize their profits, I'm here simply trying to limit my losses. As a practical matter, enforcing a setback on my property while the homes on both sides of my property don't have a setback doesn't seem like it would provide any real benefit to the county while only putting a new hardship on me. Allowing my house to be up to the utility easement, same as both of my next door neighbors who did so without a variance, results in a consistent streetscape and a better look for the street. And then I've got the last graphic. Thanks. So, in closing, I've prepared a graphic that illustrates the various hardships created by the strict application of the code. It was common knowledge at the time I was buying my property that you could build up to the access and utility easement. The new interpretation of the setback requirement for the access and utility easement, combined with the drainage easement to the north, forces my building footprint into an irregular shape that is out of character with the other homes in my neighborhood. Without a variance, the new code interpretation would cause my property to be worth $131,000 to $262,000 less than what I paid for it just a year ago. That kind of value loss is devastating to me and my wife and our family. I'm not a developer with a big budget trying to do a big project for profit. I'm a guy that had a dream of building a house for my wife and kids on our favorite street at our favorite beach, and I'm reeling to limit my losses due to a reinterpretation that occurred 12 days after I purchased my property. I'm not here today to say if the historical interpretation is correct or if the new interpretation is correct. All I'm here to say is that there's an acknowledged change in interpretation that occurred just after I bought the property, and as a result, I've been badly damaged and very much need a variance to recover. I'm asking for this variance so that the property I own today is the same property I bought just 1 year ago. As you prepare to vote, I ask you to consider the above and put yourself in my shoes and consider the golden rule to treat others the way you would want to be treated. My story qualifies as an extraordinary situation which meets the purpose of a variance, and I have a multitude of hardships illustrated on the hardship graphic, ranging from the drainage easement to the resulting shallow configuration of my lot and many others. I ask for your vote today to approve my requested variance, and I'll now introduce you to my friend and real estate attorney, Nick Beninade, who knows the technical aspects and relevant terminology better than me.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
In your timeline of changes, you refer to Mr. Dice allowing to build up to a utility easement.
Yes.
We have determined that is an access ingress utility easement. Unless I'm badly, lost a lot of memory, I've never known of being able to build up to zero lot line on an access road. And so where did you get the information that there was a change in direction under the directors?
I spoke to the Jason at staff, and he's the one that wrote these emails. This email was forwarded from Wayne, and so this was under
Jason who?
Catalano. And so the interpretation, it says right here, my interpretation of section 5.0406, and he goes into, exactly what happened. And these homes were built on these lots up to the access and utility easement, just like the homes on either side of my house, just like various homes all over the area, right around my property. In fact, when I got a licensed local surveyor and a local licensed architect, they gave me confirmation that I could do that as well, because that's been the interpretation, that's been the historical practice, that's been the understanding. And you got a lot of confused local licensed professionals that the community.
Who is the architect?
Eric Watson. He's well renowned. And Volker Survey. And
Volker Surveying should be run out of town.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Every issue to come before us, most likely when it has survey, is Volker Surveying. And he's never been here to defend it. He was here a couple of weeks ago trying to promote a project, but he's never been here to defend a survey problem that he has created. And I personally do not respect him as a surveyor.
Okay. If I could, let me just show something that's helpful, because it may sound kind of unbelievable it would be set up this way. This is our subdivision. This is Summer Green. This dotted line is the 33 foot extent of it, and it's a access and utility right of way. It's not title and easement. We're using the wrong one. It's right here. Same one up here. And as you notice, this house is, you can't quite see it's a little more, but there's actually a front step area that goes right on the edge of the 33 feet. This house, the corners of the home are right on the edge of the 33 feet. And these homes are also right on the edge of 33 feet. So regardless of any emails and
when were they built? When were they built?
They range from 1997 to I think early 2000.
In 2016.
Is there 2016?
Well, these two on Shiv is for 16.
Can you talk about the large area between the house and the lake that's labeled as a drainage easement? What is
Here,
that?
orange?
Uh-huh.
Okay, so, sorry, I'm stealing the phone. We're skipping ahead. So the issue you heard about where we've got on the south side of the property an issue with the access and utility right away. At first, that's all we knew about. If that was our only problem, we'd work around that. We'd make this work. We found out eventually though, there's on this plat an area labeled drainage easement. It's only on the plat. We've done a title search. There's no separate standalone document that describes this easement, what it does, who it's to. So we've got a labeled area on the plat, drainage easement. It's all this orange area. It's definitely on the back of our property. Extends up this way, goes throughout the plat, through most of the areas closer to the lake. It comes further south from ours. So what we learned through the process, talking to staff, and we initially thought we can do something in that area. We can do accessory structures. We can probably have a pool because you'll notice there's some things built in it. We found out though that that's not how it's going to be. We're not going to be allowed to build anything in that area. So we got to fit everything in our buildable footprint. So the home, the parking, the porches, the entranceways, the pool, if we can ever find a way to have one. So that's why the property is constrained on the north side and makes it so difficult to use. And as you can see, this is a big lot. It's not a shallow lot. It's a lot that you would expect to be buildable. And skipping way ahead, this green outline, this is what we can build on without a variance. So you see the neighbors are right up on this 33-foot line. And I think probably the reason why this was handled the way it was over the years, first of all, the plat is interesting. It actually shows this right-of-way line very clearly. It's labeled on there. It's right here. I got this red on it. And it's inside the plat lots. The plat lots go all the way down to where the asphalt is. So what's going on that's interesting, this is not a particularly old plat either. The original plat's 1995. A portion of it was replatted in 2000. And it was the same language about this right-of-way access and utility right. So it's actually inside the platted lots, and that would seem like an odd thing to do. You put the platted lots outside of the right-of-ways normally. But what's interesting in this area is the road that's there, the actual existing constructed road, it's not centered in the 66-foot area. It's all the way on the southern edge of our 33-foot side. So what you actually see out there and experience is on the north side of the road where we are, this right-of-way comes 33 feet into the property lines. On the south side, though, it comes in about 11 feet. So on the north side, there's a big impact. On the south side, that's basically your county default. You've got about a 22-foot wide road there. You've got about 11-foot an 11-foot right-of-way there. You add 20 feet to that for a setback. That's normal. That's 42 feet or so from the center line of the road. But on the north side of the road, it's a lot bigger distance. We actually have, if you think about it from the center line of the road, which is an easy way to look at the map, what's normal in the county on a local road, the default is 40 feet from the center line of the road. That's 20 feet of right-of-way for half the right-of-way, and an additional 20 feet for the setback. What we already have, if we build up to this right-of-way line, is 44 feet, because the road's about 22 feet wide, so half of that's 11 feet. You add 33 feet to it, you're 44 feet. So we're 4 feet past what is in the land development code as the default for a local road, what is considered enough to fit in utilities and roads and protect everyone and avoid any safety issues about things getting too close to the road. So we're really talking about a technical issue with the rules and what the plats say and how to interpret it. And there's space there. It's not a matter of putting a house up real close to the road. And as we were,
Isn't that a dead-end street with maybe 4 or 5 lots past you?
it is. So in fact,
Yes.
our little subdivision,
Yes, it is.
the original plat was 7 lots, and after it was replatted, that reduced to 6 lots. If you visualize what else is out here, across the street, it's Gulf of Mexico, so you have one row of homes here. and it goes maybe, 4 or 5 more lots this direction. They're not platted, they're just meets and bounds lots. And this is the only platted area here, and within it, the only home site left, the only parcel left to build on is Andrews. Andrews is this red line here. This blue outline is what we're asking for. That's not what's allowed already without a variance, that's what we want to do. So it's smaller than the footprint of the home on each side of it, clearly. And it's...
What happened to lot 1?
So this lot has been combined into a single parcel with the larger lot. It's all homesteaded. And there's a little bit of fencing up. There's a potential at some point in the future they could divide back those parcels. It wasn't a replat to combine those lots. It was combining the parcels probably for homestead protection purposes. But I was out there Sunday. There's no indication to me they're getting ready to try to do anything with that property. It's all homestead.
But lot 1's up at the top.
Oh, excuse me. Lot 1, I don't know.
It's not important. I want to ask you a question. Where is the easement going? Where does the easement go?
The
66-foot right-of-way
66
easement,
feet.
where does it go?
Yeah.
So we need to move along. This guy here got important business he got to go take care of.
This blue band is 33 feet of it. The reason why we showed 33 feet of it is that's the part that's on our plat. But it actually is double that, so
It's 66-foot right-of-way. Let's get to the point and get on with
Yes,
this
sir.
now. It's the 60, where does it go?
where does it go? It goes right along the blue line.
Where does it end up? Where does it start?
The lake outfall.
Well, on the west end, you're gonna hit water in 4 or 5 lots and it ends. On the east end.
Dead end.
Not sure, but you have a ton of development here. There's not really a road that continues on that same track.
But the easement continues.
I would assume so.
I think we know what we give you the chance to come back. Anybody has any other
Daryl,
questions?
do you know anything about the drainage easement in Orange?
None other than it was an engineering design at the time. I don't know if it's supposed to be open swale or what. I do not recall.
We'll get Mac to address it. We'll give you a chance to come back.
Okay, thank you very much.
Move your chart so we can see people, please.
Mr. Chairman, just to close business, we've got exhibits A, B, and C, which was submitted in their principal.
So entered.
Do we have small examples of the placards that you have, council, to enter into the record, or are you just going to keep those?
Well,
Is it part of our package?
you do have this one. The others I'll find out.
Thank you.
Are you a lawyer?
I am, sir, yes.
Should we enter the staff report and all that in the record?
If that's the staff's wish.
We would request that.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
He's probably going to sue us. Go ahead, Mac.
We can sum this up pretty quickly. There are a number of things in the presentation that are inaccurate. A public roadway, and this is a public roadway, the minimum width is 50 feet in the Land Development Code, not 40 feet. 40 feet is for a private roadway, and this is not a private roadway. Yes, there is a 66-foot government patent easement right-of-way in this area. 33 feet are on the south lots, 33 feet are on the north lots. It does travel all the way to a coastal dune lake outfall and through that outfall. To the north of that, the Walton County Port Authority owns basically the parcel where the outfall is. There's another large parcel that the county's interested in purchasing at the end here for public beach access. So this 6 feet of public right-of-way is likely to get used in the very near future. We recommended a variance as a solution to this particular problem. In the email chain that he presented, there's no evidence that Mr. Dice ever made an interpretation on this particular aspect of the Land Development Code. The right-of-way protection zone is in a separate section of Chapter 5, and back in time, it was completely ignored by staff. Once we got GIS up and we were able to actually see these government patent easements to know where they were, staff began respecting those and making people sit back from those. And that's happened over a number of years. We've had misinterpretations by frontline staff that were reviewing building permit records that have been corrected. There's no misinterpretation of this. We are going to protect the public right-of-way. Now, in this particular case, this This lot is encumbered on the south side by the 33-foot easement, which we require the setback to be measured from the extent of that easement, not the property line, which will effectively be in the center of the 66-foot right-of-way. And you'll notice from the pictures he showed, there's a number of houses on the south side that actually park in the right-of-way. We're correcting that going forward and not allowing people to park in the right-of-way. In this particular case, we're not opposing the reduction of the front setback because of the encumbrance at the coastal dune lake on the back side and that drainage easement that appears on the plat. We would not be opposed to reduction to a 0 front setback, but no encroachment into that easement, and that all parking, or the easement be, or the variance be conditioned that all parking would not be within the government patent easement.
Everyone clear? Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir.
Anyone from the audience like to speak in regards to this issue before us? Anyone for or anyone against? You would like to come back up and address the board? And do it briefly, please, sir.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burgess is going to recuse himself on this item.
It's too late. You know that, counsel. Jeez.
No, it's not too late. I just need to
That's
address
good.
that for the record. Thank you.
Go ahead.
We appreciate the comments from staff, and we've understood all along why the county would be protective of the right-of-ways and the easements. This is just a really unusual lot, and certainly the comments about having to meet the parking requirements, we absolutely understand that. We're gonna have to get parking up under the building. We're not gonna put any required parking spots in the right-of-way, so that's perfectly fine. That's already something we are aware of and we're planning to do. And we can stay out of that drainage easement in the rear of the property if we are able to be at the front area lined up with the other homes.
Can you live with a 10-foot instead of a 20-foot? Can you live with a 15-foot instead of 20-foot?
Well, we
Yes,
really,
ma'am.
we want the 20.
Okay.
And
I think architecturally, it makes a lot of sense. In all the other neighborhoods in the area, they encourage people to build to the same construction line, and I think it would look better if all the houses were in line with each other. And I also think it's pretty compelling that Mac is willing to let you guys build to the 33-foot line, because he's pretty tight on stuff.
And we appreciate that. I know you get other applications like this from time to time, but granting this one due to all the factors involved, it doesn't set any precedent for
I think
someone.
you covered everything. We need to move along. Close the public discussion.
Motion to close.
Second.
Second.
Motion.
Or aye on the.
Oh, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
I'm worried about your grandchild.
I make a motion to approve the variance request as submitted.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, so that it doesn't look from the appellate record if it ends up that way, there's no need to hurry. She's got a couple hours to go.
Oh, I'll hurry anyway. We gotta give them something to appeal on. Now, we already closed this thing. Now, we
I'm
don't,
just asking that you condition the approval of the variance to restrict parking.
No parking.
To outside of that easement.
So I need to amend my motion to approve the variance contingent on there being no parking allowed within the 33 feet.
I'll second that amendment.
Thank you.
discussion?
I think it speaks a lot to say that Mac is for it, the county was for it. I think there's clearly a hardship that was demonstrated by easements on both ends. I think the neighborhood line, like Jeff was talking about going across the front, shows a clear line of houses that it seems to be in harmony with the neighborhood. I'm for it.
Anybody else?
I think the easements ought to be protected. But anyway, I have a motion, I have a second. How you vote, Mr. Dixon?
Vote to approve. Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye.
Nay?
Aye.
You got your variance approved. Mr. Hall, appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can we take a
Where did
short,
our lawyer go?
can we take a short
Sure.
recess? Just a minute.
We're gonna take 10 minutes, Mr. Dykes. Burgess? Where the jail's at?
He marked on these, do you already have them? Okay. And I hope, I think this is not hardly any of it evidence that they approved it, so I don't know who did the first and second, so I'll have to wait on that. We're going back to number 5. You didn't have that, did you? Correct.
Let's call the meeting back to order. Melissa, you ready?
Good evening. I'm Melissa Ward and Colleen Sachs with Dunlap and Shipman, and to give you an overview of what the request is for, and then from there, Neil O'Connell of O'Connell and Associates is going to explain in engineering terms what our variance is about, and he's going to do way better than I could. So our client is SAP Florida Investments, and our property is on Walton Magnolia Lane. The client, in the process of buying the property, did his due diligence, and there was research done on the property before he purchased it. And at that time, and currently today, part of that research provided information that led us in a direction that needed to be corrected. So the property is designated by FEMA as both X zone and VE zone, and you guys know what that means. So what we're going to be talking about is how that actually is not the case on this piece of property, and it required a redesign of the stormwater system on the property for the development, and that redesign is why we're here today. And I'm going to specifically, Mr. O'Connell is going to go through the engineering aspect of it, what's happened, why it's changed, what it means, and what that will provide for y'all. The variance is specifically about it's not a variance from the stormwater requirements, it's a variance in the methodology. We specifically are going to provide stormwater management, but in a manner that the code does not specify or give guidelines on. So we had to ask for some clarity here. In addition to that, one of the aspects of the variance is the code does not allow you to put stormwater maintenance underneath the houses. They want it in the common area so the HOA can maintain it. We're asking for a variance from that because it's going to be necessary for this development site. And this is all hinging on the fact that we had a property that was flood zone X, and it was determined after we had developed the site, or Mr. O'Connell had developed a plan for stormwater. We had a charrette for the public meeting, and at that point we were inundated with photographs of flooding in that area. And so he's going to explain that all to you. In addition to that, we had a meeting with the Mr. Green and Mr. Jaffe of the Inlet Beach community and went over it in detail with them, and we were happy to report that they understood it, they appreciated the effort, and that they were going to speak in favor. I don't see them here tonight, so maybe that's a good thing. They're not here to complain, but I thought they were going to come and speak in favor, to be honest. They were happy, and I will say this from my perspective. We believe in good development, and I believe that shows when you see what we're trying to do here. And so to that end, unless you have any questions of me, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. O'Connell, and he's going to give you a PowerPoint presentation. Sure. Even though he has it on the monitor, I have copies. I'm going to give some out to the people who came because they have questions. In case they have questions, they can follow along. Do you need any copies in paper form?
Yes.
Okay.
We need one to enter into the record, don't we, Mr. Dykes?
Yes, sir.
A couple. I'm not sure there's one for them. There's one handsome picture.
Give me one, and then you and Charlie may have to share. That's fine. We're exactly 546. I counted out.
Mr. O'Connor, do you want to come up and start your presentation?
Sure, I think Melissa's pretty much covered it, but.
Or you want to sit down and let us vote?
No, I've put some good effort into this PowerPoint presentation, so we're going to sit through it here for just a second. My name is Neil O'Connell, O'Connell, from O'Connell & Associates. I'm principal and senior engineer. We were contacted a little over a year ago by the prospective buyer of this particular property to assist them in performing some due diligence, as Melissa previously stated. From an engineering standpoint, we look at pretty much all the basics to see if the project reasonably falls within the land development code and if it's a property that is worth developing. What you're seeing here in front of you is just a site location map and a more detailed location of actually where the site is. As Melissa mentioned, we're on Walton Magnolia Lane deep in Inlet Beach, just there near Camp Helen, and it's a 1.2 acre parcel. Part of the pre-development due diligence that we perform includes reviewing the land use, future land use maps, the National Wetland Inventory map, the FEMA flood map. We review surveys, boundary and topo, also look at utility availability, and then we look around and see what other developments are local to that specific area. In this particular instance, we have a active development order for a neighborhood directly adjacent to us in which we share property lines on two sides. What you'll see there in page 2 of the handout here on the screen in front of you is a colored illustration of the lot, and you'll also see off to the side of that the itemized list of the due diligence issues that we address, and you'll see the little check marks next to it. As we checked off those particular issues, each one of them checked out and it didn't throw up any red flags. One of the things that we're going to talk about specifically here in the next couple of minutes has to do with the FEMA flood zone designation. The area on this image that's colored green is FEMA flood zone X. FEMA flood zone X, as you know, really doesn't have any development limitations on it as far as the LDC is concerned. The blue area is VE11. That does have some density restrictions and finished floor height restrictions. And then the area below that, which is south is down, is seaward of the coastal construction control line. In that particular instance, we have some DEP limitations as well as some preservation requirements. Okay, so without boring you too much, we'll kind of just touch on some basics of stormwater design, more specifically the criteria. What we're seeing here is, there's an overlay that's not shown on there, that's the geotech report, but we have a closed basin map here. There are some closed drainage basins in that particular area, and why that's important and what that means to you is that it doesn't have positive outfall for stormwater. Why that's important is because the code, the LDC specifically addresses that, and what it requires is an elevated performance standard. Instead of the typical 25-year storm, you have to meet the performance standard for the 100-year storm. That's a bigger storm. As far as the LDC is also concerned, there's some language in there about separation from groundwater, and that's in order to make your stormwater management system perform, you have to have some separation between the bottom of your stormwater management system and the groundwater. And our geotechnical exploration out there indicated that we've got great soils for stormwater, about as good as you can get. It's out there right on the beach, but the groundwater is shallow. So when you take into all those things into consideration, we're in a closed basin. We have to meet a higher standard. We've got a high water table, but we've got good dirt, and we're also in the X zone that doesn't limit fill. Well, you put your stormwater management system in a common area, which the code requires, and then you place a bunch of fill on the site, and you put your stormwater in an exfiltration chamber. And so that's precisely what we did. And we felt like that was, a fairly reasonable and practical approach, because in reviewing the neighborhood next door, that's exactly what they did. So what we see here in this image on this slide is just a kind of a colored detail of the preliminary site plan. There's 5 lots on the site. The density for that particular site, the underlying density is what's neighborhood infill, so the underlying density is 8 units per acre. Now there is, as I mentioned before, there is some of that parcel is located within the VE zone, which limits density to 1 to 20. So if you, when doing the math, you get 50% of that site is worth 4 units. The other percentage of the site in the VE zone is worth 1 unit. 4 plus 1 is 5. It's still less than the underlying density of 8. There is a portion of the code, although it doesn't necessarily apply to this particular conversation, that the code does allow the owner or developer in this particular instance to take all of his density and move it up into the X zone, and then he would be able to get 100% of his density. So in theory, he could develop solely within the X zone and get a 8-unit townhome. He chose not to do that. He chose to take the penalty and provide this particular site plan. And again, the idea here, the red here is intended to indicate impervious surfaces, which is intended by the Land Development Code. It doesn't necessarily mean it's all going to be impervious, but the green area represents the area where we're going to put our exfiltration chambers and our stormwater management, which is within the common area. Okay, so the next thing that we did after we did our preliminary design, we start developing our application for a development order. The first thing that we have to do is apply, or actually advertise for a community meeting. And there's specific rules outlined within the code as to how you're supposed to do that, and we followed that. We had a community meeting in late November 2017, but immediately after advertising for the meeting, we were inundated with photographs. I mean, and the photographs that you see here, and you might have a hard time seeing them there, but there's photographs from 2013 and 2014 that indicate that this whole basin was in flood, and also some photographs that were provided to us from the 1970s that showed that it floods. So I don't think that there's any, there's no disagreement on our part that the area floods. I think that what we're trying to establish here is that why isn't it that FEMA understands that the area floods? Because conceivably an area that's in an X zone should be higher than the 500-year flood elevation. Okay, so getting to that point, so we can see that the area floods, and why is this important as far as this conversation is concerned? As I mentioned before, the area is in an X zone, and how FEMA designates that X zone is that it's higher in elevation than the 500-year flood. Well, what we know from looking at the photographs, and because we were most of us, not all of us, were here in 2013 and 2014 when we were subjected to some pretty serious flooding. What we did is did a little bit of research and pulled up some historical Doppler imagery from the rainfall totals from the 2013 event. That's what you see there in that colored image there to the right. You can see down right there in the corner, I don't know if you can see it from there or on your handout, but what it shows is what Inlet Beach actually had, they totaled 19.64 inches of rain over a 3-day period, okay? In the background, we're showing the FEMA map that clearly indicates that it's flood zone X and has been forever. And then in front, we have a rainfall frequency and depth table that's published by NOAA that indicates, how we shape and design and select storms. Basically, what all of this indicates is that, in fact, that 2013 event was a 100-year, 72-hour storm. And again, I'm throwing some engineering information to you, and this makes perfect sense to me, and I can do this all night long. If your eyes are starting to roll back in your head, just wave your hands. Okay, so looking at those photographs and actually doing some additional surveying, I actually went in the field and did some surveying myself, which is dangerous, but did it anyway. We wanted to try and establish what the flood elevation was during those particular events. And so using that information, using some of the rainfall data that we were able to collect, we confidently established that we felt like the flood elevation in the 2013 event was at elevation 8, okay? And why this is important is because the elevation of our site is at 6. So here we have FEMA saying that our site is supposed to be at an elevation greater than a 500-year flood, when we have just demonstrated that our site is 2 feet underwater in a 100-year flood. That's our problem. Okay, on this slide, what we're trying to illustrate here is that our site on its own outperforms the performance standards of the LDC. As I mentioned to you earlier, we've got highly permeable soils. So a little bit of statistics here for you. A design storm for, say, a 100-year return frequency and a 1-hour duration is 4.75 inches. 4.75 inches per hour. The permeability of the soil on that site is over 10 inches per hour. So the permeability of the soil on site is double the infiltration rate of the 100-year storm. So our site on its own can not only meet the attenuation requirements outlined in the code, it doubles them. And obviously, because the requirement for treatment within the code is only the first ½ inch, we can absorb, until we saturate our site, we can absorb up to 6.75 inches of water. So as the site currently exists, it meets or exceeds the performance standards of the LDC. The two items there that I mentioned there, as far as the Walton County Land Development Code that are in yellow, those are two items that we really want to talk about as it relates to the variance request. One of them, I don't have the chapters on this page, I've got the chapters later on, but the first one discusses that no stormwater is not allowed to be placed or designed underneath the structure. That happened before. It had some problems, but they decided they were going to introduce that into the code. So it's not allowed to be under houses. And at the same time, not only is it not allowed to be under houses, it's not allowed to be on your site at all. It's all got to go in the common area. And that's fine, because we can do that. Because we can fill our site. We can put 5 foot of fill in our site legally by the code. The code allows us to do that. But that's part of our problem, is we know that since our site is subject to flooding, that's not the right thing to do. Okay? And so what we're here to talk about today and request a variance from are two elements of the code that are forcing us into a design that we feel like is detrimental and creates negative consequences. Okay, so sorry, I'm looking over my glasses. I'm not at this distance. So the LDC does allow us to fill the site. Okay. So what could possibly go wrong with us filling the site? Well, I've given you two images right here for you to consider. The image to the left is a real simple image of 2 beakers of water, and they both have the same amount of water in them. And then you take a cube that has a specific, density or volume, and you put it in the water. It's going to raise the volume of the water in the beaker. Okay. That's the same thing that happens in a closed basin that's subject to flooding, right? Out there in the world, in real world hydrogeology, the image to the right indicates that if you've got a closed basin that is subject to flooding, and then you go encumber that basin at the bottom of the basin, particularly where this site is located, and you put a bunch of dirt in there, well, that's fine for our site because we'll get our site high and dry, but the same amount of water is still coming to that basin. The same amount of water is still going to want to stage in that basin, and since it can't stage on our site, the water level comes up, and that is the negative consequence to filling the site. Now, so I've told you what the negative consequences are to filling our site, which is currently allowed by the code. And I've told you I've described to you a couple of the elements that we're looking for a variance from to try and avoid creating some of these negative consequences. So what we've done, in consideration of the fact that we've already demonstrated that our existing site meets or exceeds the current performance standards of the LDC and as it relates to stormwater, what we'd like to do is take a wider perspective back up a little bit and say, all right, well, if we leave our site generally intact, if we don't do anything on the surface of our site to negatively impact the permeability of the existing soils, can we still develop our site? And the answer is absolutely yes, we can, and there's methods and means and materials that we can use in order to be able to do that. But in order to be able to do that, we need to, A, allow the site to flood, because we've already conceded that it floods. The owner's okay with the site floods, but the reality is the basin, all of our neighbors kind of need the site to flood too. So what we're aiming to do here is allow the area that currently exists to remain permeable and to remain part of the calculation for our stormwater management system. So the question is, what do we do about the roads? Well, let me first, I added this slide earlier, so I kind of jumped ahead, but let me first say in the context of the basin, as far as our proposed site grading plan, our intent here is to demonstrate that by developing this site, not only are we not making the impact in the drainage basin worse, we're actually making it better, okay? And in doing so, by grading our site, we are, and what I'm showing here in this image here to the left is a profile showing the existing grade, which is in red, which is mountains of dirt, and then the green underneath it, which is the finished grade. All of that red is being excavated and removed from the site. Okay, we're grading our site and we're actually lowering some of the site. And in doing so, we are creating an additional we're taking away 18,000 cubic feet of soil from the site that's currently located within that basin. And effectively what that does is create an additional, when it's in flood, create an additional 135,000 gallons of storage within the basin. Yes.
Yeah. That's going to be on the whole site? You're going to take all that dirt out?
Really, well, what you're looking at here is there's a retaining wall that's in there, and if you look on the image of the right, there's a red line that's shaped like a J, and that profile actually follows the retaining wall. So it's not, you're not doing a complete cross section across the site. It's representative of basically a loop around the site, indicating how much soil is being removed. The total volume of which we've calculated at 18,000 cubic feet of soil is going to be removed from the site. And that soil that's being removed from the site is in the closed drainage basin, is in an area that floods, that's been proven to flood. And so if you remove that from the site, you remove it from the basin at the same time, while it's hardly discernible, and because it's a 30 or 40 acre basin, you are creating additional storage volume within that basin. Now, the only way that this works is that at the same time that we're allowed to do that, we're also allowing the area that's underneath these houses to be used as stormwater management. Now, I mentioned before about the VE zone, okay? 4 of the lots that are shown on this image here are touching the VE zone. The VE at 11. I already mentioned that our current elevation of our site is at around 6. I mean, it varies, but most of it is at 6. Because they're touching the VE zone and it's a VE 11, the minimum finished floor elevation for all of those houses has got to be 1 foot above that, so it's a 12. So already, without even doing anything to our site, our houses are 6 feet above grade. So what we've actually done is we've actually raised the houses a little bit more, put parking underneath the houses. The houses are now on piles, so that removes any concern about foundation as it relates to stormwater. That's one of the concerns in the code right now, is of how the foundation and the stormwater underneath your house are going to interact. But at the same time, it leaves that area open for maintenance. Not only can you see it, but you can also go underneath your house and maintain it. Now the question is, what are you maintaining? Well, what we're proposing as far as all of the road surfaces and sidewalks is pervious concrete. Pervious concrete has a void ratio of 25%. Okay, the soils that we have on site right now have a void ratio of 25%. So you can take the sand off the site and you can put down pervious concrete, and it's a net zero in impervious surfaces. Okay, so you can drive on it, you can make it part of your roadway system, and you have not negatively impacted you have not negatively impacted the stormwater qualities as it relates to the existing site. Now, you do actually have to put subbase underneath that as well, so what we're doing underneath that pervious concrete is taking out a foot of dirt underneath that and replacing it with number 57 clean and wash limestone wrapped in filter fabric. Now, that limestone that's going underneath that pervious concrete has a void ratio of 40%. The sand that we're removing to put in this rock has a void ratio of 25%. So we're already increasing the void ratio underneath the pervious concrete by 37%. Is everybody keeping up? So what we're doing here is not only are we lowering the site and increasing volume in the drainage basin to the benefit of everybody that's currently there and subjected to flooding, but we're also increasing the capacity of the soils that are currently on site right now to infiltrate and treat stormwater. So you got questions about, does anybody have questions about pervious concrete? I do. Okay. So if your question about pervious concrete, all right, show us how pervious concrete can be. Well, a couple of years ago, we were involved in a pervious concrete or roadway improvement, stormwater management system improvement project over in phase 4 of Watercolor. What you're seeing right here on this slide to the left, they had significant flooding issues in one particular area. Well, what we did was we came in and we cut out a big section and we put in pervious concrete. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but we'll see. It's supposed to. What you're seeing right there, and it's not working, but that's a video of pervious concrete actually working. After this system was installed, I saw a big rainstorm coming, and I jumped in my truck and I drove over there and I stood there with an umbrella and watched the water gush down the street to this pervious concrete, and when it got to it, it's just like rolling off the edge of a cliff down a storm drain. It went right into the pervious concrete. I got my feet stayed dry. There's no question as to whether or not pervious concrete works. The question I think is that you should be asking me is, well, what are you going to do in order to ensure that it continues to work? And I'm going to get the lawyers to come back up here in just a minute and explain to you how they're going to write the codes, covenants, and restrictions to ensure that there's proper language in there to ensure that there's maintenance of these particular common area assets. But we've also, what we've done is we've developed a maintenance plan already that's actually come from, there's a pervious concrete association that issues standard maintenance bulletins, and we've provided that to them, and they're including that in their codes, covenants, and restrictions as it relates to homeowner responsibilities in perpetuity. Anybody have any questions on that?
I'm trying to get around exactly what you asking for.
I'm almost there. I told you I was going to take you on the ride. So now here we are. All right. Immaculate timing for your question, sir. So the question has to do with our hardship and our request for variance. Well, I've demonstrated to you that the existing capacity of our site to attenuate and treat stormwater and meet or exceed the performance standards of the LDC is there. There's no question about it. It does. It doubles it. So we're intending on meeting that, and what we want to do is we want to be able to continue to meet that, not only but we want to exceed that by continuing to improve what we've already got, not only by taking soil off the site to enhance the basin, but also with whatever improvements that we're going to put on the site to make the site usable from a development standpoint. We'll continue to meet that requirement. So the two elements of the code that we're asking for a variance from, and again, we're not asking for a variance from the performance standards because we've already demonstrated that the existing site meets them, and should we be allowed to get a variance from these two other aspects, the site will be developed in accordance with the current standards, with the current existing, the way the site's currently working, and therefore we can guarantee that the site will continue to meet them as they currently do. Chapter number one is Chapter 5.06.03.16, which is that no stormwater management systems are allowed to be placed underneath houses. And the next one is 5.06.03.16, which is specific to requiring that all stormwater management systems for development must be located within common areas. Provided we get a variance from those two specific elements of the code, we can ensure that we can continue to meet the performance standards for the pre and the post-development storms for a 100-year return storm. And at the same time, we can avoid the trap which the LDC is currently set for us, which is to say, all right, well, if we can't get a variance for those, we're going to have to fill the site in order to be able to meet those standards, and that we are, I don't think anybody would disagree, is not the appropriate solution.
What you're asking for is the variance to the 5.06.0315, no stormwater management systems shall be designed under residential. You want us to give you a variance to that so it can't be designed under residential.
So it can be.
Yes. And then 5.06.03.16, you want to be able to use underneath the house.
Well, we don't want our stormwater management system to be limited to common area.
You won't be able to use the whole lot.
Correct.
Because basically what you're going to do, to my understanding, you're going to dig a hole around it. That's going to hold 15,000 gallons at 153, whatever. You're going to dig a hole, correct?
We're going to lower the site, so we're not going to. We're not. Well, we're going to grade the site. So right now the site's doing this.
Right.
We're going to grade it flat so you can drive on it, so you can work.
Right.
You know, so you can develop the site. But what we're doing in doing that is that we're not changing the characteristics of the soil on the site. So what we've already demonstrated is that the soil left alone can meet those performance standards of the stormwater section of the code.
Just hang on. You're going to level a lot. You're going to take the dirt and you're going to level. You're going to have a flat lot.
Correct.
And you're saying that that's going to increase your capacity of water. Is that correct?
In the overall basin, it would, yes.
Overall basin.
Correct.
Okay, that's part of your drainage plan.
Yes.
Leveling site.
Right.
The other thing you're going to do is take the road and underneath the house for parking.
Yes.
And use the impervious concrete system.
Pervious concrete,
Pervious
yes.
concrete system. And that takes care of the other drainage.
Correct.
And you're saying all of that will is better than filling the lot.
Absolutely,
Which
no
you have
question.
the right to do.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Do you have anything else to add? Because I think we pretty well cover it, don't you?
I do.
Okay. we got some people we need to listen to. Melissa, you want to add anything? Are we missing any of this?
Colleen Sachs from Dunlap and Chipman can address the development will require covenants and restrictions and specific maintenance requirements for the subdivision should it get approved. Remember, this is a development plan that has to go through TRC, Planning Commission, and the Board of County Commissioners. So that's a part of that process.
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to let's hear from the county, and then we'll
Absolutely.
let her address that issue. How about
Absolutely.
that?
One other thing I'd like to mention is that as a part of this process, he has already, the engineers have met with the Northwest Florida Water Management District. They've applied for a permit through them, and that is something that is that they've met with, and that they are so that they meet the standard, the state standard for stormwater management.
Has Water Management approved it?
It is submitted and it's been accepted. We don't have the approval letter, so I can't say.
It is something that they say is workable.
Well, and I'll let him speak to it. He met with them in person before he submitted the application, and I believe that they see the problem that we have. So I'll just let that.
Yeah, they actually, when I went to meet with them, sat down, they scratched their head just like we did, and we've met with all the engineers here in the county too, and everybody scratched their head. And when I went to the district, to the state, the first thing they said is, well, it doesn't, well, thank you, we agree with what you're saying, and I think that we're probably just going to give you a de minimis. And I said, well, that doesn't really help me because there's no guidance within the LDC for situations like this. So we're just kind of floating out here in space. We need to try and meet a standard, and the standard that we want to try and grab onto is the state. If y'all can go ahead and give us a permit for this work, then we're meeting a standard.
Right.
We're not floating around in space. And they said, well, okay, here, fill out your 97-page permit application, send us $500, and we'll review it. We did that. Our permit application was deemed complete on the 12th of this month. Permit issuance is imminent, but we're in line.
Okay. Mr. Carpenter, you want to address this?
Yes, sir. Matt Carpenter for the record. This is a real unusual circumstance. And normally we don't come out in favor of a particular variance strongly, but in this case, this is the only way to do it.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
It makes sense. At first it doesn't, because we want a variance from basically all the counties, or most of the county's stormwater rules that we require everybody to adhere to, because certainly stormwater is one of our high priorities, proper stormwater management. But in this circumstance, this lot is at the bottom of the basin. I think the engineer has come up with a creative approach to address stormwater here. And I think this is probably the only situation, as they've described it, that will actually improve the circumstance in the neighborhood. There is a historical flooding problem on the street in front of this lot. People that have lived there a long time certainly have lots of photographs and lots of personal experience to share. And by and large, I think they will support this particular plan because I think this plan is the best plan for the neighborhood. In addition to the plan for the lot, it's the best plan for the adjoining lots.
Well, if you go in there and you take and do all the field, you're going to cause flooding on the other lots.
Well, it typically will push the water somewhere else, or it will block the historical flow, and it will go somewhere else.
Water's going somewhere.
In this particular case, Greg Graham has provided a written statement supporting this request, providing that 3 conditions are met that he recommends. If you choose to approve this request, we would ask that you include those 3 conditions in Greg Graham's April 25, 2018 memo that I think we've provided to each of y'all.
In our package?
It was actually
no, I think it's a loose
I got you.
single page.
And Mac, you
Thank you,
want
Mr.
staff's report as well as?
Yes, sir. If we could enter the staff report into record along with Mr. Graham's separate statement dated April 25.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone from the audience like to have a say-so in this? Please come up. You've been sitting here a long time.
Okay, my name's Scott Franzen, and I have a partial interest in Shoreline 9 condos next to this project. I have the original photos that the fire department talked about. If you'll pass them to you, I'd like you to take a look at them. These are actual photos of the flooding in that area. Those photos were nice, but I don't think that they were accurate or depicted the severity of the water in that area. I was very impressed when I came in because you guys started out with a prayer, a pledge of allegiance, and I thought, wow, we're getting back to the old stuff again. I was a police officer in Newport, Kentucky, and used to that kind of treatment. As we wound up stating just a little bit ago, it sounds to me like you've already made up your minds that you want to go ahead and approve this project without hearing anybody, and I know you are hearing me, but take a look at these photos, because there's no engineering project, I don't care what they come up with, you can only dig so deep before you hit the ocean itself, that's going to allow that kind of water to drain off of this area. Go ahead.
Are you against? What are you against? What you against?
I'm against the building of this, the leveling off, taking down the dirt, and putting these houses in there, because the problem is drainage, and there's nothing going to solve that kind of drainage.
It's my understanding, and trust me, I share your concern, but it's my understanding there is an area like a bowl, and the water is going to go somewhere. They own a piece of land in the bottom of that bowl.
Right.
Now, they allow by the code to build on it.
I understand that.
We can't stop them from building on it.
No.
Now, they got a choice. You know, this is the way I look at this. They have a choice. They can bring a bunch of fill in and fill it, and you know what that does is it spreads the water out. The engineer is in my opinion, and like Mr. Carmen said, has come up with a unique way to try to maintain the water in their bowl. And they digging down to level it, not digging but leveling it. They put in drainage in that would take that water away from here. Now, you know, we got a choice. It's not the fact that he can build there. He's going to build on it.
I understand.
And he can, you know, he can design this to where it would make it worse for all the neighbors. I'm in a little project myself, and I understand when you dig down, it helps things out. And that's why I was impressed with the presentation and with the concrete system he's going to use. And I understand your concern.
Well, I understand that they're going to put their buildings on stilts.
Well, they're building it up so they can put a material underneath.
The rest of us are on ground level.
They're building it up so they can put a material to take care of the water, to take care of your flooding issues. If you would, show him your design on the in concrete, on the drainage on the concrete underneath the houses.
I wouldn't understand that.
Yeah, you will. It's real simple. Show it to him. He's going to take out the sand and put rock in, and there's a concrete mix that water will seep through. I didn't know it until I started my little project. They got it. There's pavement for that also. But you can take the water and pour on it. It's using a bigger rock, and the water would drain. It's going to drain better, like he said, from 25% to 40%.
And where will it drain to?
Down.
Down.
It's going to go down into the ground by this system.
Okay.
Which is
But so far down is water, isn't there?
Pardon me?
When you get so far down, don't you hit water? Isn't there water there?
Well, he's got
So that means
6
water-
feet.
So that means water is going to sit on top of water. I just don't see it draining. I just can't fathom this ever working to where it will.
Does it drain now?
No. They come in with pumps and try to pump it out.
Well, then let me ask you this. What is the owner to do with the property?
What is he to do with it?
If you're against him building on it,
I'm not against him building on it. I just think that, and if I was the man and I came down there and I saw these pictures, and somebody said, "Do you want to buy this land?" I'd have to say no. Up where I'm from, we have the Ohio River, and the people who build houses on the river banks, we call fools because that water's going to come up and flood everybody out. I just don't see where this is going to be beneficial to the people that live around there.
What is your proposal for the gentleman to develop the property to build houses on? How would you propose that?
I wouldn't. I wouldn't let him build houses. I mean.
But the code says that he can.
Okay, if he can, and he can. But you have an obligation, I think, to let people know that if you do move into here, or if you do want to buy one of these houses or some of this property, there's a really good chance that you're going to have water up to your living room window in a little while.
I think they would be well aware of it when they start marking it.
Well, again, I think you have an obligation to tell the people to let them know. I'm not saying don't stop them from building or don't let them build, but people need to be aware that this water is going to come up.
Yeah, could I call Neil back up? The finished grade of the road surface under the houses, what elevation is that?
Between 6 and 7.
And you've established that when there's a 100-year storm event, the water comes up to the 8 or 9 foot level?
Correct.
So the area under the people's houses in that 100-year storm would be unusable for parking?
Yes.
But the habitable space is up 10 feet?
8 feet above that.
Okay. I mean, you're increasing the capacity of the site to hold water while still allowing there to be habitable structures on stilts in the air.
Yep.
other hand, I said, is that you look at those pictures and, you know, just, what do you think? Do you think that would work?
If I had my way about it, there'd be a cow pasture.
Hey,
But it's not.
That's what I'm trying to.
It is a resident, it's a lot that they can put houses on.
Okay.
I don't know if I can come up just yet, but the concern here, I think, is that and the request for the variance is a function of an error on the FEMA flood map, right? If the FEMA flood map was correct, and it shouldn't be flood zone X, it should be a numbered A zone. If it was a numbered A zone, you wouldn't be able to develop that property because you would be limited by the amount of fill that you could put on it, and then you'd have to, if you did fill it, you'd have to have compensatory storage and all of these other things. It would basically limit the density to 1. So that's the problem.
Let's move on. I mean, the gentleman's got a concern, and I understand his concern, but I think you do agree that the gentleman owns the land, he has a right to develop.
Absolutely, yes.
And then it's up to, in my opinion, it's up to this board if they presented the best way to develop that property. And that's what we got to make that decision. And we understand your concerns, and we're going to note it
Yeah, it's
in our
not
discussion.
just for me, it's for the other people that are going to be moving in there.
We're going to make sure we address that with the attorneys when they come back up here.
Okay.
And we appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
But you understand the predicament we're in.
Yeah.
So we
It's like-
appreciate
it's
you
like-
helping
it's
us.
like the old, what's the old thing? If you believe that, I'll say it's for swampland or something. Thank you.
Anyone else? State your name for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Robert Rakoba. I'm a homeowner at the Shoreline 9 complex. I'm a mechanical engineer, registered in the state of Texas as a professional engineer. So I've been listening to the engineering proposal offered by the consultant. It's new, but when I hear it's unique, it's something that hasn't been offered up before. Pervious concrete, something I didn't even know existed until just now. So I think just as somebody who's hearing it for the first time as a homeowner, somebody who's hearing it for the first time as an engineer, I think it would be worthwhile to table it and let others look at this proposal. People that have experience in dealing with pervious concrete, people that can assess it, ask questions, even the homeowners themselves, just understanding it a little bit more. It sounds like it's something that's so radical that we're asking for variances or modifications from the code in several different aspects. And so I think that it would be worthwhile to table this in some fashion. I don't know what the proper procedure is to do that, but be able to at least say, hey, listen, I'm going to give some other people some ideas and let them have a chance to kind of chew on it and kind of come back to this and ask some reasonable questions. I think you just raised a good point, things I'd like to know about. Pervious concrete, I mean, does it clog? Like, that's just as an engineer, it's like, okay, great, this stuff, it's, you know, it's permeous, it'll allow, you know, drainage. But over 15 years, 10 years, does it clog? What happens then? And just things like that. So that's my point, is I just like to see if we can maybe table it, allow homeowners and others to assess it, and come back to this.
We appreciate you coming up.
Thank
you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Tamara Rakova. That engineer is my husband. He looks at things through the eyes of an engineer. I unfortunately look at things through the eyes of a lawyer, so I tend to parse things that are said to me. And I heard a lot of discussion from Mr. O'Connell about how this was unique, and people were scratching their heads, and everybody was out in space. And what occurs to me in that situation is this is an interesting proposal, but what if it doesn't work? What kind of data do we have? What do we have to suggest that this unique plan will actually do what it is suggested it can do? Mr. Chick asked the question about, 100-year flood, you still got 2 feet of water underneath those homes. How fast can it drain? Mr. O'Connell mentioned the statistic that this retainage that they were attempting to build into these homes would hold 135,000 gallons of water, but that the leveling process was going to remove, I think it was 18,000 cubic feet of ground. When you're talking about replacing one thing in one unit with something that you're measuring in other units, you don't, it's, to me, it's apples and oranges. I agree with my husband when he asks about whether or not there's some chance to study this a little bit more, since this is unique and unusual to all of us. And then also as an attorney, I'm looking at this and thinking, okay, right now they could fill it, and if they fill it, they will begin to flood the properties to their eastern border, which is where I'm a homeowner. Right now we don't flood because we're above grade in the 100-year floodplain. But what happens is the water comes down from inlet, comes down Walton Magnolia Lane from the boat dock there, towards Phillips Inlet, towards the park, and it continues to come down at a rate that's pretty astounding sometimes. So it may keep the people that live in these 5 homes high and, dry, or sort of dry. But if it begins to flood or flood more desperately homeowners around there, then you got a situation where the county has granted a variance, and I don't know, from a legal standpoint, is that state action that results in some kind of diminution of value of the adjoining properties? Are you guys buying yourself a lawsuit if that happens in in the future, if the system doesn't work as well as Mr. O'Connell and everybody that's associated with his project hopes it will? So that's just something that's occurred to me, and I just wanted to bring that up as a another point of consideration.
Thank you very much. We
welcome.
appreciate it. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, Matt Carpenter for the Planning Department. Our circumstances here, they can design this project to meet the Land Development Code requirements. And if they meet those requirements, state law requires us to approve it. We don't want to do that. We're suggesting that their plan, which as radical as it may seem, and there are some folks here tonight that may not have had either the training to review that or the time to review that. We recognize that. Our county engineer has reviewed it and provided written documentation supporting this particular plan with certain conditions. Our in-house stormwater engineer has reviewed this particular plan. Our floodplain manager has reviewed this particular plan. And we're all in agreement that this is the best plan. What the code requires them to do on this lot that would be legal is not the best plan. We believe that compliance with the code could potentially injure adjacent property owners.
Flood other neighbors.
And that's why we support this particular idea as a much better idea than what the code would require them to do.
Thank you, Mr.
Thanks, sir.
Anyone else? Melissa, you want to close it up?
Yes, sir, and I want to just say, too, I want to address one thing that we didn't bring up because it's not a part of our particular variance, but it's relative to this topic. There have been other engineers to look at, outside the county's engineers, to look at this particular piece of property, this particular closed drainage basin, and a solution, because this is not the first time neighbors have contacted the county and said, we're flooding again, what are you going to do about it? And I'm not sure that the engineer brought the design with him, but I can tell you that one outside consultant brought in a proposal, and their proposal to solve the problem was a bad idea, so much so that the county said, we can't even possibly do it. And I'll summarize what it was. They want to pipe it underneath the ground, under the road, down and drain it in an open pipe to Lake Powell. It's not even possible. It's such a bad idea on so many levels, because now this water that's accumulating right here is going to be untreated and dumped into a coastal dune lake, which we know what would happen. So there have been many engineers who've looked at this property and what to do with it, and they all come up with some sort of a plan. Lupin Beach was approved with a plan. It's not digging it out and making the area bigger so that they can retain more water. It's to use fill, which is allowed by code. So I would like to just in closing say, we appreciate 100% that the staff recognizes this is a very unusual position that we're in, and that we're trying to make it better and not worse. And we would ask that you would consider that in your deliberations. Yes, sir.
Would you support the recommendation of the county to have these little conditions?
I don't know that I've seen the conditions. We have?
Yeah,
we do. I apologize.
I was going to actually just address that right now. We have seen those conditions and we do support them. We will make sure that we have covenants and restrictions on the property that will not impact the stormwater management system.
Okay, that was the county's, they wanted this included in our...
Exactly,
approval.
right. And I did want to point out that this is, it's the property here that's unique. The method is not unique. This is a method that has been used before in other places, the way that you drain things and the way you manage the stormwater. But the property is unique, and that's why we're here today.
What's he gonna do about notifying the potential property owners?
Well, I think that they'll have obviously an obligation to tell them this is the nature of this piece of property.
Is it
That's
gonna
something
be
that
part
will
of
have
the
to be
restrictions?
disclosed.
Is it
We
gonna
will, the
covenants?
stormwater, absolutely, the stormwater management system and the way it operates is going to be part of the restrictive covenants, and nobody will be permitted to do anything.
Yeah, but are they gonna be aware that their car could be underwater if we have a 100-year storm? They gonna be made aware of it?
If I may, it's entirely reasonable to have a note on the plat so that it's recorded in the public records, and that in no time would somebody who's looking to buy a piece of property from this developer on this piece of property not be aware that there's a flooding issue there. So that it says FEMA X because that's what it is, but there would be a note on each one of those that we can easily put a note on the plat that says flooding occurs, understory retention, these sort of things.
It will be on there.
Right. We absolutely can do that.
Or should we make that part of our,
You can
make that a condition, absolutely.
anything else?
I don't have any other questions.
Anyone else from the audience, anything to say?
Would you want to make it a condition that the pictures get to the people before they buy the property?
No, we're not gonna do that. Motion to close at public discussion.
I motion to close.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Everyone understands our,
I'd like to hear what Daryl has to say about it.
Well, first of all, I am not to be confused with a civil engineer. However,
wait. We want a motion first, or do you want discussion first?
Aren't we discussing?
No. Now, in the past, I was told we had to have a motion once
Yeah,
or
the proper-
close it. We need a
Yeah,
motion.
the proper is to make a motion and
We
then
need
discuss it.
Motion and a second and discussion, and then discussion. And then even though you can change your motion or not, you make a motion, you don't have to vote for it.
Well, you do
But-
if you're the primary. If you're the second, you don't have to vote.
Oh, really? Okay, so we need a motion. Now, first of all, we need to do, does everyone understand exactly, I think what we need to do is have a motion on 5.06.03.15. That's the one that addressed, the variance to the stormwater management system to be designed to be underneath the residential. I think we need a motion for that, Mr. Dice.
I was thinking. Okay. I was just confirming, because there's a lot of stuff in 5.060 through A to determine what exactly we're doing. And Mac has indicated that the first one you believe would be the only one that, is that correct? That I just want to make sure we're citing the right code sections, because in the staff report, it lists 5.0603.A and A.16. So I want to make sure that's different than what Mr. O'Connell.
Well, and I think Mr. O'Connell mentioned item 15 from 3A also, that they were looking for a variance from. We advertised essentially 5.0603A, which is that entire section that includes 3A16. But I think he indicated that there are a number of things in there that they would comply with. So our advertising was proper. And it can be, you can rule on anything within Section A.
My understanding is, Mr. Knight set me out for this. We're going to call for a motion on 5.06.03.15 when it says the no stormwater management system shall be designed or constructed for use on a residential or commercial structure with the exception of existing lots. We're going to ask for a motion to allow stormwater management system to be allowed under the residential lots. Correct, Mr. Knight?
Yes, the request was so they can design and construct under the residential law.
That's going to be the first motion.
Yes, sir.
Well, we can.
If that's the
We are going to call for that motion on 5.06.03.15. Anyone want to make that motion?
I make a motion, we approve.
And a second.
Second.
Now, you want to discuss it?
Sure.
What do you want to discuss? What do you want to
I was
say?
gonna say, I would think you'd do it all at one time.
No, I'm not doing it all one time. I'm running this show now. We're going to do it one at a time. 5.06.03, we have a motion to change the zoning underneath the house. We have a second.
All right.
Discussion.
If we're going to come, there was some language that the county specifically wanted so they could have further review of the.
Could that just be handled with the county commissioners when they approve the final development order? Because all we're doing is giving a variance to the rule that they can't use the under part of the house for stormwater.
But the county wanted to review all this before we give them that variance. So they want final approval to our variance to be able to say this stuff here is they want to look at it further after we give them the variance.
See, I think that all throughout the county that we're already elevating houses on pilings and using that space for stormwater retention. So it's a very common practice to do that. There's also been pervious concrete in use since at least 2000 that I know of, and it performs remarkably well. There's not a ton of it on the site, and the site already floods. So what you have is a problem with the site flooding.
Who are you talking to now? Let's deal with this.
He's talking to us.
I'm talking about all of these things here. I don't think affect the variance.
Would it
in my
hurt to
opinion.
apply it?
It couldn't hurt, no, sir.
And then also, I was thinking, you had talked about adding language where residents were informed on the plat that it was, that their cars could possibly be flooded. And if we were going to do it in two separate motions, then we need to apply this to both motions, both restrictions, both of those restrictions to both motions. If we were going to do it each.
You made the motion?
I second
Who made the motion?
Mr. Burgess made it first.
It is my opinion that the county recommendation that be added, I think it need to be added to the motion. It won't hurt, won't hurt, and I think the motion need to be amended to add that and to be amended to put on the plat that the buyers will be notified by the recorded plat. What do you think, Jeff?
I don't see that being our responsibility.
Okay, what about notifying?
That the site floods?
Yeah.
to the buyers.
Yes.
I don't see that applying to the variance for using the, we're talking about meeting the rules of the stormwater plan, and they're intending to meet the capacity requirements for the 100-year storm event in the closed basin, which they're going to do with the design.
I think that most people come down may not know that it's a flood zone. If we approve this variance where he goes in and levels it and digs it down to hold more capacity of water, that testimony has been given that it will hold the water in the 100-year flood, that we need to protect the county's interests, that we allowed this to happen, but they were notified on the plat.
May I make a suggestion as to the language?
No, I don't think so. I think we've done. Mr. Dykes, do you want to add anything? We listen to Mr. Dykes.
I mean, I think any language on the plat would have to be hashed out between the county staff as well as, you know, the applicant. So, I mean, it's up to you. Was there a specific question about the motion itself, or just?
Well, it's the question that we want to amend the motion to put the
That's up
language.
to the board. If
to
Mr.
denote-
Burgess wishes to amend the motion, he can ask to be allowed to amend the motion. If the board allows it, we'd still need a second on the amended motion.
To notify, you know, put notification on the recorded plat.
Right. Again, that's up to Mr. Burgess. If he wants to make that as part of his motion, he can withdraw his motion. You can vote on the current motion. Those are your options.
I think that the county had wanted the additional oversight. I think some of the people in the audience wanted some additional oversight. I think that the applicant agreed to the oversight. And if they're willing to take the oversight, the other people want the oversight, it can't hurt to have the oversight. And then the notification certainly isn't going to harm anybody. If you tell somebody, hey, look, your could possibly flood, if they were to build it up, if they were to go the opposite way and build the property up, then their cars wouldn't flood.
All right, Charlie, we've discussed this. I think you said what you had to say, Jeff said what he had to say. It's up to Mr. Burgess to amend his motion.
I retract my motion and choose to amend it, that we approve the variance to section 5.06.03.15 and incorporate the terms and conditions of Mr. Greg Graham's letter dated April 25th, 2018, and that the ultimate final subdivision plat does make reference to historical flooding of the site and put any potential buyers on notice.
You gonna second that again?
I'll second that.
You gonna second it? I was fixing to go your way. You gonna second it, Laura? We have a motion, we have a second. And Charlie, we have discussed it. Any discussion? Mr. Dixon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Jeff?
Aye.
Aye. Charlie?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's the first motion. Now we're going to deal with the second motion. Stormwater management system to be designed and constructed to be in the common area, not on or across proposed lots with exception of existing lots. That needs to address that it needs a variance to that 5.06.03.16 shall allow stormwater system to be constructed underneath the residential structures. Is that right, Mr. Dykes?
That sounds correct. Yes, sir.
And since we amended the first motion and included the language from the county, I don't think it's necessary to include that in the second motion. Mr. Dykes, what's your opinion?
I would tend to agree. It appears that the system that's being proposed, there's no way to design and build it without putting it on the residential lots. That one actually says it would have to be incorporated in the common areas. So there are common areas, but based on the plan that was presented,
Right.
I don't see how they could do what they want to do.
Do we need to put that other language in this motion?
No, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, so this.
But it's up to the board.
It'd be a simple motion, right? I mean, it's gonna be noted by the first motion.
Yeah.
And we did what the county asked us to do, and we also put the notification to the potential buyers.
Right. What I'm saying is, I don't see how they could not. There's no way I see that they could do what they want to do with the storm system and not have to put it on residential lots.
Right.
So you've already encompassed all that in your first motion that just passed. So yeah, I mean, it would be redundant. I mean,
So you say we don't have to have a second motion?
No, you don't have to add the language that you were
Okay.
speaking about.
Do we have a motion? Not yet.
We just approved that
We gotta do the second motion, the 5.06.3, that's the other request.
Thought we didn't need that one.
No, I don't know. There may be parts of the stormwater system that are in the common areas. I'm not sure, but I mean, they've requested from both. What I was saying is that the additional language, such as Mr. Graham's points, as well as the plat language conditions, don't need to be added to this motion.
But you do think we need to have a motion on the second?
They've requested it, so I mean, it's up to the board whether or not you want to grant it.
Well, the way I'm seeing it is that one addresses the idea of placing stormwater under a residential structure, and the other allows it to go across lots.
Right.
So there's two separate things. And I make a motion that we approve the variance as requested to section 5.06.03.16.
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
I think the property is still going to flood. I think this is a better alternative than doing what the land development code allows them to do. So if they were to do it, I mean, I don't see that this is going to just prevent flooding, but I think it will make it somewhat better. I think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, there was testimony they're increasing the capacity of the site to hold water, so they're improving the situation for that end of the street. I think that's very compelling.
They're minimizing, I mean, they're not maximizing density.
They're taking dirt away, not bringing dirt in. So you have a problem already. This development will actually improve conditions for all the neighbors, which is pretty hard to argue against.
Free of charge.
Free of charge.
Instead of 8 houses, they're building 4.
Look it up. We have a motion, we have a second. How you vote? Mr. Burgess?
Aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. We do appreciate it.
Do you need your photographs back?
We have one more. Who's here for the North project located at North Sunset Harbor? Presented South Finding applicant Thomas B. Smith Jr. Who's here for the last variance? Come on up, state your name for the record. Ms. O'Connor.
I mean, somebody's name before.
Hello, I'm Thomas Smith, and I'm the owner of Lot 37, and I'm here to request a variance. I have a brief summary that I'm sorry I'm going to have to read to you guys. I know you are tired. I'm requesting a variance from Florida Building Code R.322.3. Request is authorized by section 4.05.08.A of the Walton County Land Development Code. The request is to build an unattached, uninhabited garage on a monolithic slab in an AE8 zone with a coastal A designation. So here's the summary on what's happened. I want y'all to know that I first came over here in March of 2015 and met with Hal Laird. That's how long I've been trying to determine what to build on, what's allowable to build, and what's the best way to build. I did the due diligence to actually come over here right after I bought the lot and talk to Hal Laird to determine what's the best plan, what's the safest avenue for me and also the rest of the neighborhood. I didn't want my property to negatively affect the neighborhood. Hal Laird actually proposed or recommended that I build the house on pilings, and he made the recommendation that after I told him that the subdivision does allow detached garages, because that was the main problem I was having, was figuring out not the house. Yes, I wanted the water to go under the house, but what about the garage? How do I get water to go in the garage? Well, you can't. Due to the building requirements and lot dimensions and the HOA requirement to build a side-loading garage, Hal Laird recommended an uninhabited detached garage. And the house would be on pilings. The detached garage would be built on a monolithic slab. This is what he said back in 2015. With hydrostatic smart vents and frangible walls built with waterproof materials below the 9-foot base flood elevation, and he would recommend no sheetrock, don't finish it out. Okay, so I took his recommendation and I went and found the house plan and a garage plan. After that, I went and spoke to the engineer, a civil engineer. He desired a geotechnical report, and here's where it got bad for me. The geotechnical report indicated silty sands down to 43 feet. House pilings would be a minimum of 35 feet in the ground. Okay. And as timing goes, about the time this happened, Hal Laird was replaced by Aaron Craker. And Mr. Craker interprets the FEMA bulletins concerning the uninhabited structures and garages differently. Now Mr. Craker said the piling would have to be on, or the garage would have to be on pilings also. So our current garage plan shows piling depths of 35 feet minimum in the ground, and actually 10-inch tops. I submitted that to Mr. Craker, and he actually did not pass it. Because I submitted it with the garage on grade. He said unless I built the garage elevation up to 9 foot, that I couldn't just put pilings in and cap it with concrete. My pilings would have to actually be long enough to support the roof system. So my garage pilings will need to be roughly 45 feet long, as the garage has 9-foot ceilings. I feel that these construction methods are beyond what would reasonably be expected to build an uninhabited detached garage in the flood zone. As I was thinking this over, I actually thought about what I submitted to you guys, and I wish that I had actually just shown you the garage. And
We'll mark this as applicant's Exhibit A.
I should have submitted that earlier to Miss Vivian. And what I want y'all to note on that is just a simple 3-car garage, and it actually has a breezeway that attaches. It's not the breezeway is not attached to the home. it's just butted right up next to it. This house and garage that I'm currently under construction on my home. I held up on the permitting. I didn't re-engineer the garage because Mr. Craker advised me that FEMA has a new preliminary floodplain map dated March 16th, and that's on one of the exhibits. It's the colorful one with the map that Vivian. It's dated March 16, 2016, that benefits my property and the building requirements. They'd be less strict once adopted by the county. The front portion of our property where the attached garage is proposed will no longer be in the coastal A. And the handout that I just showed you on the back page, it shows where the current building requirements in the flood coastal A zone goes. And if and when the map has been out here for over 2 years, it's actually been delayed because the reason the map's not been approved is an entity in South Walton County near Hogtown Bayou, from what I've gathered from Mr. Craker, that it's been held up by an appeal. So Mr. Craker recommended that we wait, and I can tell you that the problem is the new map is stuck in bureaucracy of an appeal by one entity in South Walton County near Hogtown Bayou. I've been recently informed by Mr. Carpenter, gave me the courtesy of a call, and told me that another LiDAR aircraft was recently flown over South Walton because of the appeal, I guess. North Walton County was not even flown over. Our property is on the north side of Choctawhatchee Bay in the subdivision Bay Harbor. It's right on the bay. I've been waiting for over a year on this new LiDAR to be flown and map generated, and it was not even going to be relative to my property because they only flew over South Walton.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes, sir.
What are you asking for?
I'm asking for a variance from the building code that requires me to put 45-foot pilings for my garage.
Well, what do you want?
Just a simple monolithic slab.
What do you want to do? I mean, what do you want to do? You want a slab?
Yes, sir.
So what you asking for is a variance from the 45-foot piling.
Yes, sir.
To have a concrete slab for a garage that is going to be in a floodplain?
Yes, sir. It's still going to be in the AE8.
And what they wanted to do, they wanted you to put a 45-foot pole in the ground and drive up 9 feet on it?
Well, if I build the garage on grade, then I need the extra 10 feet to hold up the structure, the roof structure. If I build the elevation up on the front of the lot to 9 feet, it's not going to look good, and it's not going to match the neighborhood. So I desire to stay at 7 feet. The grade on the lot is currently 7 feet. I propose 7.5 feet for the slab, the top of the slab.
It's my understanding what you're asking for is variance to the 4.05.08 to have a slab at 7.5 feet
Yes, sir.
instead of having pilings to 45 feet in the ground for an elevation of 9 feet.
No, if I have I can go 35 foot and not have the extra 9 feet if I put the elevation of the garage slab at 9. If I bring it down to 7.5, and then I have to have another 9 feet of piles. I hope I got this right.
You still want pilings? on the ground?
No, sir. I
You
just
don't want no pilings at all?
If the map that FEMA generated in 2016 had been adopted,
All I'm trying to determine is what you want.
Yes,
We
sir.
done and heard that, we're gonna listen from county.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna get another idea, then we'll come back and let you finish.
yes, sir.
But what you wanna do away with is do away with part of the code that says you have to have 45 feet or 35 feet pilings in the ground to have concrete slab. That's what you want.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so have a seat right there and we'll get you back. Mac, help us out here.
Thank you, sir. I think we can bring some clarity to it if we allow our floodplain manager, Aaron Craker, to explain the circumstance.
Sure.
Hi, I'm Aaron Craker. I was the floodplain manager. I'm now the environmental planner, but I did this review for Mr. Smith here. Specifically what he's asking for, the coastal A zone requires structures to be built on pilings or elevated foundations because this coastal A zone is defined as an area subject to wave activity. So we want these elevated structures to be elevated to be over the top of these breaking waves that could be possible in these areas. Mr. Smith is right that the new preliminary flood maps will push that line further towards the Choctawhatchee Bay, and he wouldn't need a variance today if that map was adopted. But we're kind of stuck with our other maps until we get that map adopted, which shows the majority of the property within that coastal A zone, which was a county created map. The piling requirements, in this case, he has poor soils that wouldn't support the load of the house. I don't know what the load of the garage would be, but he could have the garage at grade. What I had requested was the piling be run to the roof structure. He could still have the mono slab foundation at the 7-foot elevation. The elevation requirement for the coastal A zone requires the lowest horizontal structural member, which in this case would be the roof structure, if you run the pilings all the way to the roof, to be at 1 foot above the base flood elevation, which is 88 currently. So he'd have to have a 9-foot roof.
With frangible walls?
With frangible
and
walls.
frangible slab?
And a frangible slab, correct.
Is you agreeable to that?
Yeah, that's pretty much what we've been discussing for a long time, yes.
Now, do you understand what he just said? And you agree with it?
Yes, sir.
With the I mentioned the pilings as well. I know you're trying to avoid having to use pilings altogether, so I want to be clear.
Maybe I didn't understand it.
Okay. What I had told you throughout this whole process while we've been waiting for the map to be adopted was that in order to get it permitted, we would make you have the pilings run to the roof structure, which would have turned your 35 foot into 45 foot for just easy math. And then you would have breakaway walls. You could still have that slab foundation at 7 feet as long as you installed hydrostatic flood vents and other things. I think I had heard you during your explanation say that we would have to made the garage floor at 9 feet.
Let me ask something before you answer that. Did you not say that if the new flood map was out, he wouldn't be here asking for the variance?
Correct.
Did you not say that the map that you're using is county generated?
Yes.
So there is a flood map that's coming. Is that correct?
Correct. We don't have a good time frame. It is
right, but it's coming.
It eventually, yes.
So then, why should we take and cause him the hardship if it's coming?
The NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, requires us to apply the more strict map in this case, which is our current map because the new map hasn't been adopted
Right, but
yet.
if we grant him the variance and he understands it's in a floodplain, does that jeopardize anything as far as flood insurance? That's between him and his flood insurance.
That and we're kind of in uncharted territory with floodplain variances. We participate in a program called the Community Rating System, which by enforcing these higher regulatory standards, we create a savings for the entire community. So when we start granting variances to this thing, it looks like we're maybe not enforcing it.
What Aaron's talking about is it's a community-wide rating. So when they impose those stricter guidelines, then the whole county gets the benefit of that. If we start allowing people to deviate from that when they come back, then everybody's insurance could potentially go up because now they're seeing that you're deviating from the stricter guidelines.
What, Mr. Dykes, what's gonna happen whenever we make him do what he will not have to do when the map comes out? And he's been waiting. I mean,
It's not perfect by any means.
we appreciate that. Any questions for this gentleman?
Yeah, I'm kind of questioning the need for 35-foot deep pilings to support a garage structure, but I understand the coastal A requires the piling structure itself.
Elevated foundation piling or column,
Right.
typically, and I think it specifically says in erodible soils, which is anything but bedrock in engineering.
I've had the displeasure of designing a house in Bay Harbor, which is not too far from here, and we had all kind of problems building in that velocity flood zone right up against the seawall there. And
This isn't been over.
yeah, I mean, I've been through this before, and we designed the garage to be under the house, supported with the pilings coming up through to the second level where the main living level was. Yeah. I don't know if you know Dr. Walker, but I designed that house, so I'm familiar with this issue. And I'm not sure how we got to where we are today by not following the rules.
Can I weigh in?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
I want to be a team player. The county hopes to keep the rating. I understand that. But it puts a hardship. The hardship is, I want to be a team player, but you're putting a hardship on me. That's significant.
Question. Is the height of the garage going to vary from one height to, from one with pilings or without pilings? Will the garage floor be taller?
It doesn't have to.
It doesn't have to.
It can be at grade.
So it would flood in either case?
Correct.
And the pilings would just keep it from falling down?
That's the idea. Minimize the damage.
And if you were to put the slab on grade, it would possibly fall?
Yes, it would cause scour underneath the foundation, potentially. That's the idea behind the wave action. That may cause irreparable damage to the property, or to the structure, not the property.
I think that I understand the issue. I think we pretty well addressed it. However, I think that there's testimony that says if he waits long enough, he won't have to do this. I think that need to be taken into consideration. I think we're heard enough. It's 9:15. Anyone else have anything to say or questions? Anyone good? Ms. Thomas, do you have something else to say? Do you feel like we heard enough? Mr. Parrish? Are you comfortable that you've given us the information you need? Everyone comfortable they received it? Motion to close the public discussion.
County supported, didn't it?
Motion to close public
Motion to
discussion.
close public discussion.
Second.
Second it.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion.
Motion to approve the requested variance to get away from section 8.02.
4.05, 5.08.
Okay, I was thinking it was 8.02.
No, you're right.
No, it's the R.
Wait.
It's R32.
That's the foundation. That's the part of the
That's
code that
right.
deals with foundation.
Is it R.322.2?
3. So we want to
I'm
get
sorry.
away from R.322.3? Yes.
Second.
What?
Mr. Chairman, he's requesting a deviation from, or a variance from the building code provision, not the land development code provision.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 4 point.
No, sir, it's the R.322.3
Correct.
section of the Florida Building Code.
All right. I would like
It's section 4.0508A of the Land Development Code authorizes the opportunity for the
All
variance.
right, I apologize for that. I would amend my motion to be from the building code R.322.3 to allow him to build his slab on grade.
But one more thing, it's not a
We
amendment.
closed this house, we closed it. We're done. Sit down.
It's about
We're
the
closed.
specific language that you're going to use in your motion.
All right, then
4.05.08 authorizes the variance. R3223 is from the Florida Building Code, but it is in our ordinance that we use that language for coastal A zones. So you're not giving a variance from the Florida Building Code, you're giving a variance from the use of that section for coastal A zone areas.
So with the variant, so we're clear, so we, and the board has it, so it's a variance from 4.05.08. That was a question, that's what they were struggling with. They didn't know if it was 4.05.08 or a variance from R.322.3.
The only place I'm aware the R3223 language lies is in our actual floodplain ordinance. I don't believe it's in the Land Development Code. It was adopted into the Land Development Code. 4.05.08 is the variance portion of our floodplain ordinance out of the Land Development Code that outlines what needs to be done in order to get a variance.
So which part of the code is he seeking the variance from? So we're clear.
I think we can cover this. Can we cover that the motion is the motion to the Florida Building Code R322.3 authorized by 4.0508 allowed a variance for the structure to build on the slab
Without pilings.
without piling. That's doable. Motion, is that your motion? If you want to amend your motion?
I'll amend my motion so that it, just what you said, without piling.
Because that's what he's asking for. Would you not agree?
Could we say that we allow him to use the to be adopted floodplain restrictions that would actually help him to be in compliance when
You
they're
don't never
adopted?
know whenever they're going to adopt them.
The ones,
They'll probably be before the house gets a CO.
Well, it could be, it could not be. He's been waiting for a year or two.
And the other issue you may have, which it doesn't sound like it could happen, but it might, is if they change that and they move that line to a different spot, and he would be stuck with wherever that line gets moved to.
All right, Charlie, what's your motion? Did you have the motion, Karen?
what does she have?
You want to read it back?
Motion to approve the requested variance from building code provision R.322.3 as authorized by section 4.05.08 to allow building a structure on slab. That's all that.
That's what he's asking.
Building the garage.
That's what he asked, the garage on the slab. We have a motion, we have a second.
On a slab without pilings. Second.
You made the motion.
All right.
Charlie, quit talking to yourself. We have a second discussion. Mr. Burgess, how you vote?
Vote aye.
Charlie?
Aye.
Aye. Jeff?
Nay.
What's that?
Aye.
Boy, Jeff was wrong on all of them. You got your variance report. But you understand that it's your liability if it
Yes.
floods. You're not going to
Yes,
come
sir.
back and sue us.
Yes, sir. I believe the new map is, I think, the injustice was done in 2011 when that part of the community was made a coastal A zone.
Appreciate you coming, Mr.
I
Thomas.
think they got it right this time.
Thank you for your. Jeff feels contrary tonight. You wrong on the right with it, right on the.
I had the hardest time building that house up in there, and we had to follow the dang code.
All you had to do All you gotta do is come ask us.
And I feel like that.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing we need to finish up the minutes.
But we had front-loaded garage
Yeah,
doors.
Yep. Motion, I'm still gonna call for a motion on the minutes. Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
Wait, what did you want?
Who approved the minutes?
Charlie
I made a motion.
Mr. Dixon seconded.
We all aye.
I can't vote on the minutes, I wasn't here last time.
No, you can still vote on
Would have been an A.
You're allowed to vote on
You would have been.
Just because you're not here. You can vote nay if you like, but you can still vote on
Did
the
you get
minutes.
everything?
He's gonna vote nay on the adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Anybody?
We adjourn.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night, thank you, Ms. Middle.
You done with your book? I'll stick it on back in here.
Thank you, Vivian.
You keeping your book?
Yeah, I give it
Do what?